Please come to order. Good morning. Welcome to the Commissioner of St. Mary's County meeting this date, Tuesday, August 17th, 2021. I am Randy Guy, President of Commissioners of St. Mary's County. I'd like to introduce the other commissioners. Sitting to my right, representing the 1st Commissioner District, which includes Ridge, Piney Point, St. George Island, Mr. Eric Colvin.
Good morning.
Representing the 2nd Commissioner District, which includes Leonardtown, Hollywood, Mike Hewitt.
Good morning.
John O'Connor, who represents the 3rd Commissioner District, which includes Charlotte Hall, 7th District, Golden Beach, and Mechanicsville, is joining us by Zoom today. Are you on, John?
Good morning.
Sitting to my left, representing the 4th Commissioner District, which includes Lexington Park, some of California, Great Mills, and some of Hollywood, Mr. Todd Morgan. Dr. Rebecca Bridget, our County Administrator, is sitting at the table to my left.
Good morning.
Lisa Cassis, our Communications Director, is sitting at the table to my right.
Good morning.
Amy Carter, our Video Media Producer, is behind the glass. Please turn your cell phones off or on vibrate. When you come to the presentation table, please approach by coming down the center aisle, and remember, this meeting is being televised, so you need to speak clearly and directly into the microphone for recording purposes. In other words, you're live. Look good. At this time, we have invocation and pledge by Commissioner Morgan.
Thank you.
Please stand.
I thought I was, okay.
I think it's Commissioner
I thought it was
O'Connor.
Commissioner O'Connor.
I got it. John, I got it. Dear Heavenly Father, as we read and view a tragedy throughout the world, guide us to be steadfast and true to your word. Help us to heal. Help us to be safe not only to ourselves, but to those around us. Oh Lord, Solomon asked you for wisdom to guide. Help us to guide our county as we move forward. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the United States
of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. Yeah, the approval of the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of July 27, 2021.
Second.
Have first, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, next we have a couple proclamations. The first one is Commissioner Morgan will present the National Aviation Day. I think Mr. John Dietrich and Mr. Castellanos.
You can come back up. You can sit there, okay. This morning, I'm privileged to be able to read the proclamation for National Aviation Day. Whereas in 1939, President Franklin Roosevelt proclaimed August 19th National Aviation Day, which is observed in the United States each year to celebrate the history and development of the aviation industry. And whereas the Patuxent River Naval Air Station continues to provide readiness for research, development, testing and evaluation, acquisition, engineering, and fleet support to the entire range of manned and unmanned naval aircraft, engines, avionics, aircraft support systems, and ship-shore air operations. And whereas St. Mary's County Regional Airport serves the base of operation for the Maryland State Police Medevac, MedStar Washington Hospital Center, Civil Air Patrol, Navy Annapolis Flight Center, Piedmont Flight Center, Southern Maryland Seaplanes, University of Maryland Research and Development Facility for Unmanned Aircraft Systems, Atkinson Aviation to provide aircraft maintenance to general aviation, and Air Tech. And whereas the Experimental Aircraft Association hosted another successful Young Eagles rally on June 12, 2021, providing free plane rides to local youth, and hosted an annual open hangar event to all airport tenants. And whereas the Naval Air Museum and Visitor Center is open to the public and a stop on the Explore Maryland by Air Challenge to provide educational opportunities for visitors to experience the evolution of U.S. naval aviation history, and includes exhibits of naval aviation's technology history, simulators, vital hands-on interactive demonstrations of aeronautical sciences. Now, therefore, with the Commissioners of St. Mary's County, do hereby proclaim August 19, 2021 National Aviation Day in St. Mary's County, and thank the Airport Advisory Board and its volunteer efforts over the past year, and encourage all citizens to take an interest in and take advantage of opportunities in aviation and aviation-related activities. Today,
I'd like to thank you very much for this proclamation. I think it speaks well for the airport that not only is it a place where the average person who's got an airplane can get their plane hangared and maintained and fly out of there, but there's research and development going on. There's education, not only classes that happen at the university system of Maryland and Southern Maryland, the old Higher Ed Center, but also real-life experiences like those young people got with the Young Eagles event. It also speaks well for why the airport is a job generator, why it's an economic engine for the county. But Chris and I will be back with another item that'll explain how we're going to go beyond the airport fence going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
I think Allison's on the phone too. If she has anything.
Allison, do you have anything?
Thank you, John and Commissioners. No, I don't have anything to add. I think Mr. Dietrich covered it very well. Just excited for the airport to continue to grow and really just surge as an economic, what do I say? For the county. And it's really great, and we look forward to many more years.
Okay. Hey, we'll do a show and tell stand. We'll stay behind the dais here, Commissioners. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have the 185th anniversary of the Piney Point Lighthouse, and Commissioner Colvin will present and give this to Mr. Shepard, and the directors of the museums.
Yeah, so Ms. Karen Stone and April Havens, thank you all for being here. It's an honor to be able to present this. It's right down the street in my district, beautiful facility. So whereas the Piney Point Lighthouse's solitary beacon has helped guide countless ships through the perils of fog and darkness and is a cherished part of our regional heritage, and whereas Piney Point Lighthouse was the first lighthouse built on the Potomac River and is one of the last remaining, as well as the only lighthouse tower not to have been altered since its original construction in 1836, and whereas it was a manned light station under the Lighthouse Service until 1939, when the U.S. Coast Guard took control of it, and there were a total of 21 lighthouse keepers, including 5 women, until its decommissioning in 1964. And whereas as one of the 4 museums and historic sites operated by St. Mary's County Museum Division, Piney Point Lighthouse is on the National Register of Historic Places. And now, therefore, we, the Commissioners of St. Mary's County, do hereby recognize the 185th anniversary of the Piney Point Lighthouse and encourage the community to learn more about this vital piece of our history.
Thank you. Deep within our mission at Recreation and Parks, it's the preservation of culture and historical resources, and the Piney Point Lighthouse is one of them, as is recognized on the National Register. It's over 100 years it shone a light on the Potomac River, and now we're there, and it still shines a light on the great work of our museum division and the excellent work of staff, our manager, Karen Stone, and our site director, April Havens, and Andrew's with us, and the many other staff that make our museums a destination place and a preservation of historical resources for time. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much.
Ladies.
Real quick, Karen, did you want to highlight any of the displays that people can view at the museum now? Just to give a plug for people who haven't been there yet.
We do have a number of new exhibits at the museum. We took advantage of the downtime last year and renovated all the exhibits, and we have a nice new history timeline of the area and of the lighthouse specifically, but also of the Tolson Hotel that was once a resort area there, and a children's area all about the Osprey. So yes, do come see us.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, next we need a motion to adjourn as the Commissioner of St. Mary's County.
I make a motion that we adjourn as the Commissioners of St. Mary's County and reconvene as the Commissioners of the Board of Health.
Second.
Have a first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dr. Brewster, our health officer for the county, will come forward and give us her presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hope you all are doing well. Thanks again for your time this morning. It's been a month since we've met formally on COVID, although I know we've met for other reasons. So there's a lot that's happened, as you know, in the past few weeks. If you could go to the next
Dr.
slide,
Brewster,
please.
move the microphone closer to your, we can't hear you very well.
Thank you. Is that better?
Yes.
That's better.
Great. I was just saying there's been a lot that's happened in the past month since we formally met on the COVID pandemic.
You ready for the website?
Yeah, actually, just on to the next slide's fine. We probably won't need to go to the website.
Okay, great.
Unless there's an additional question.
Thank you, Dr. Brewster.
So unfortunately, we're experiencing here locally a surge in COVID-19 cases, likely driven by the new Delta variant that I referenced when we last met in July. Our data analysis team that's led by Dr. Jessica Malish has returned to 7 days a week data analysis operations, and we are continuing to keep our local data sources updated at our website that I've indicated here on this slide. Our local data analysis, which includes COVID cases that are identified through both PCR testing and antigen testing, has indicated that we've been in a high red zone of community transmission of COVID-19 for the past 3 weeks. Even if you just look at PCR cases, we are now in the high red zone of community transmission. Again, just by PCR cases alone, we would have been as of last week. As illustrated here, our weekly new cases began rising at the beginning of July and are accelerating rapidly. This is also reflected in the rising new case rate that we have for our county. And again, these are new cases, new daily cases averaged over a rolling average of the past 7 days per 100,000. So you adjust it for population. We're fairly close to the 100,000 mark. I know recently with the new census we're a little bit above. Go to the next slide, please. The age groups with the lowest vaccine coverage are the ones primarily experiencing the greatest number of new cases. The 20 to 39 and the 0 to 19 age groups in particular, though our 40 to 59ers are not far behind. And you can see by the colors, the red line indicates that 20 to 39 age group, and then the light turquoise blue kind of color is the 0 to 19 age group. Both of those were rising very, very sharply and quickly, and are the two groups with the greatest number of cases. I'll review the numbers in a bit based on vaccination status. As we've seen in this pandemic previously, the rise in hospitalizations tends to lag behind the rise in cases by at least a few weeks. What we're seeing now, which is a rise in hospitalization bed use by St. Mary's County residents, demonstrates the acceleration in hospitalizations for our residents, likely related to the beginning of the surge from a few weeks ago. And of course, that's something we're tracking very, very closely, as are, of course, our hospital partners throughout the state. COVID fatalities, similarly, we also tend to see a lag in the COVID fatalities from when the surge in cases happen. It tends to be at least a few weeks, if not longer, before you start to see a rise in fatalities. Hopefully, we'll be able to prevent some of this, though, with the protection that vaccination is affording our population, as well as current available treatments that we're putting into play. We don't, at this time, have any local or state data to quantify the impact of long COVID on our population. I've talked about this a little bit in the past, and I'll certainly talk about it some more here, what long COVID is. We are planning at the Health Department an effort to assess the impact of long COVID on our population here in the county. We are very concerned about long COVID. This is something that we're just learning about more and more as months go on into this pandemic. It really distinguishes COVID as a viral respiratory infection from many of the other types of viral respiratory infections, because many of them don't have these long-term complications as a risk of COVID infection, but COVID does seem to show that. Increasingly, we're hearing about these types of symptoms that I've listed here that people can have for months after they've recovered from their infectious part of infection, but they're still struggling. Many people are still struggling with these types of symptoms, whether it's one or whether it's a multitude. Ongoing loss of taste or smell, they may have continuing pain or tiredness, that brain fog where they have difficulty concentrating or thinking, and certainly decreased exercise tolerance. We've definitely seen this impact a variety of athletes, for example, who had very high exercise tolerances before, were very fit, and then they get COVID, and it's much more difficult for them to return to the same level of competitive play that they had before. And then impact on mood, depression, anxiety, so forth as well. Again, we're still studying the prevalence of it, but the early studies that are out there right now seem to indicate about 10 to 30% of people infected with COVID could develop any one or a multitude of these long COVID symptoms. We're still learning, again, how long they tend to last. Obviously, we're just a year and a half now into this pandemic. It may be higher burden in those people who were hospitalized due to COVID. And we don't have any treatments identified yet. We don't know how the Delta variant impacts the risk for long COVID, developing long COVID symptoms. So again, not a lot, still a lot that we need to learn about this, but we're paying very close attention to all the studies that are looking into this.
Well, quick question on this. I have heard about the long COVID. Is there any research into the age breakdown of long COVID?
Yeah, so those are very early studies. There's not, I wouldn't say there's strong data to suggest that certain age group tends to get it more than others. We do know that people who are hospitalized with COVID, at least based on these early studies, tend to get it more. And we've seen a higher burden of hospitalization in our older age groups. But with Delta variant, as we start to see more and more young people hospitalized, I think that will shift.
Another question, too, on the vaccine, has it ever received FDA approval yet?
So all of them are under emergency use authorization for the FDA, and this is very typical for when you're needing to prioritize responding to a pandemic.
And I asked that because I talked to 3 people this weekend who have not had the shots.
Yeah.
And their fear is it hasn't had FDA approval.
Sure. There's different layers of approval.
It's an emergency thing, and I said we pushed it through and got something approved. And I told them I had my shots, and I have not suffered any ill effects that I know of.
Yeah,
I feel okay.
You bring up a great point, Commissioner, and that is definitely a reason that people cite as a reason for not getting vaccinated. This is now 8 months into having vaccines for our population. It's probably the most studied vaccines in terms of safety. Right? We have billions of people now who've received doses of these vaccines, and we've now had several months to monitor them in terms of the safety impact and so forth. And what we're seeing now demonstrates that these vaccines are very safe. Yes, there have been issues identified in a very rare situations to the 1 in a million kind of order for some situations, for some issues. But we are really encouraged by the incredible safety profiles that have been coming out 8 months into this. We do expect the FDA to provide full authorization of at least the Pfizer vaccine, possibly Moderna as well, hopefully within the next couple weeks.
That's good. Yeah, I was on the news, the CBS News this weekend. There was I can't remember the doctor's name, who said he was a director of disease and infectious something. I can't remember, but he mentioned that FDA approval should be within weeks.
Yeah, it should be happening soon.
Another thing he also mentioned, the cloth mask that we've been wearing, he said they're about worthless.
Yeah, I wouldn't
I don't know why he
agree
said
with that.
But he said the N95, and he mentioned a couple other numbers as being the type we should be.
If you're in a medical setting and there's a high load of viral particles around you in the air, certainly I think those N95 masks or surgical masks, 3-ply surgical masks are important.
Right, he mentioned a couple others, and I said, oh boy, that's bad
cloth
news.
mask,
that's
if you
bad
have
news to put out, but.
Yeah. There's different opinions on that, certainly, but we've had a lot of studies done already now on cloth face coverings, and if they're fit appropriately, multi-layer, especially the ones that have a filtration inserted in it, they can be effective. We have recommended double masking for some who, where the cloth face covering isn't very robust. And certainly, if people want to switch from a cloth face covering to like a 3-ply surgical mask, that may be a good thing to do also in a time of Delta.
I think, Dr. Brewster, one of the things that's out there, and I discussed this with you yesterday, was there are cloth masks that have the N95 insert. So you don't, some people have that stigmatism to wearing the 95 mask, that big white one, but you've seen the Maryland flag one that I've worn, it has a 95 insert, so they can get those on Amazon, actually.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. And there's also KN95 masks out there that may offer a level of protection. So N95 masks, typically we want to fit test people for them. That's why we use them a lot in medical settings. But KN95 masks
Wednesday,
may
I
be an
flew
option.
back from Salt Lake City, Utah, and they had several people in the airport had these looked like barrels in their mouth. They were like these cylinder type things that I suppose they're used as masks. I don't know. It covered the nose. It was like a barrel that was strapped to him. I have no idea what kind of a breathing device that would. Look like somebody from Star Wars, But
Yeah, we'll look into that.
that's what they were wearing. It must have been acceptable because they allowed them into the airport. The airports require you wear a mask covering nose and mouth, and soon they fly in the aircraft too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. Thank you. If just to go by our vaccination rates, so fully vaccinated residents in St. Mary's County by age. So obviously, we've invested a lot of time, energy, resources into making vaccine as easily available as we can to our residents here in the county. There have been so many partners who have worked very, very closely together over several months, including all the healthcare providers and the hospital and other healthcare systems that are serving this county as well, to make vaccine available. Unfortunately, fortunately, we have half of our population that has opted to get vaccinated and is fully vaccinated, but we still have a lot of people here in this county who are age eligible and have opted not to get vaccinated at this point or are still deciding. So what that does is it gives us as a community a level or a decreased level, I should say, of protection that we could have had, of course, with higher vaccination coverage in our community. I'll talk a little bit about how this might be playing a role now with our Delta surge and the cases that we're seeing. Just, again, the lack of protection is significant, not just for those individuals who have decided not to get vaccinated, if they're age eligible, and of course, there's all the children that are 11 and younger who are not even age eligible at this time. But it's significant for our whole community because that lack of individual protection then causes some level of impact on the protection our community can get. We get to the next slide.
Real quick, back up just real quickly to the previous one. 12 and older, is that 12 to 17?
No, that's 17 and under, so 0 to 17. The 12 to 17 population is sitting at about 30 or 34%.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure I understood that.
I think that's one that we're working on getting into our graph. We just have to wait for our graph to get updated with that. The vast majority of new cases are happening in unvaccinated persons. However, the vaccines aren't 100%. They've never claimed to be 100%. And in fact, they were originally, when they were developed and put out, the impact of the vaccines was about preventing severe illness, which I'll talk about in a moment. We realized earlier on, as the vaccines were being rolled out, that they were also very, very effective at preventing infection. But they aren't 100%. And naturally, there will be a proportion of what we call breakthrough cases. So fully vaccinated individuals, meaning 2 weeks after your second dose if you're Moderna Pfizer, or 2 weeks after your first or your only dose if you're J&J. So naturally, there's going to be a portion of those cases that are going to develop that are called breakthrough cases. As more and more of the virus circulates in the community, there's going to be greater exposure. So about 80% of our new cases since we've been in the surge have been in unvaccinated persons. And we're starting to learn that the Delta variant may be a bit stronger than the other COVID strains that we've been dealing with thus far. And so we're still learning how protective the vaccines are against Delta variant compared to prior strains. But we think because the Delta variant is stronger and more contagious, as I'll talk about in a moment, that the vaccines may not be as effective against Delta variant as they have been with some of the other strains, but still very effective, and you can tell by the cases here the protection that people with vaccine are getting. So nearly all COVID hospitalizations in the past couple months have been in unvaccinated persons. Again, this demonstrates very strongly the point that our COVID vaccines are very effective against protecting people from having disease severe enough to cause hospitalization. We have had some individuals who've had breakthrough infection become hospitalized, but not nearly as many as what we're seeing with those who are unvaccinated. And again, even stronger protection against COVID-related death for those who are fully vaccinated. So commissioners, I had spoke about the Delta variant a little earlier, and then of course at our last meeting in July, and the pace of the surge, as well as the increasing number of samples we're getting back that are genotyped as Delta variant, is an indication to us that Delta variant is likely the main strain that's circulating here now in the county and driving this rapid acceleration in cases. Again, it seems to be much more contagious than prior COVID strains, whereas the prior COVID strains, like the original COVID strain, we were estimating it was for every one person would infect about 3 people with the Delta variant so far, and we're still studying this and learning this, and so, you know, of course, this might get updated as more and more information emerges. But right now, so far, we're estimating that one person infected with Delta variant would then infect about 7 additional people. So this is more than twice as infective as the original, more than twice as contagious as the original strain. We are seeing younger people more impacted, higher viral loads of the virus in those people who are infected, and for those who are getting breakthrough infections, fully vaccinated people who are getting infected with COVID are still able to pass the virus to others. So in summary, the vaccines that we have are providing strong protection against the Delta infection. We're still learning exactly how much compared to the other variants that we've seen, but certainly our data shows us that there's still strong protection against Delta variant. The vaccines are excellent against hospitalizations and death from Delta variant thus far. So this brings me to the discussion about vaccines. And that vaccination, of course, is a primary mechanism of protecting not just each of our own selves and our families, but our whole community. Because as I've indicated before, even fully vaccinated people are now getting some cases because of the higher trend in cases that we're seeing in those who are unvaccinated. So we are encouraging employers to consider vaccine-related policy to optimize the safety of their workplaces, the safety of their employees, and the safety of the customers or clients who use their services. This is about safety and protecting life. It's about taking action for the safety of your employees and for the public that you serve. These policies work in increasing vaccine uptake and protecting our community, and in decreasing the impact of workforce COVID and the losses associated with that, whether it's loss of work time, The costs associated with that to an employer as people take leave or if they happen to get hospitalized or accrue medical bills. And then also, of course, if there's any loss of life involved, that's a tremendous impact. It also minimizes the risk of losing workforce to things like quarantine. As cases happen and outbreaks happen, and we start identifying those who are close contacts. And it's especially important for healthcare providers, first responders, public services like county government services and other essential services that we need to maintain the integrity of those services on an ongoing basis for our community. So Commissioners, I am strongly encouraging you to consider effective policy for county government, given the critical nature of continuity of county government services, even in the current COVID-19 surge, and the need for our public to be able to safely access these services, and your employees to continue working in a safe environment to provide those in-person services to our public. Another policy I'm strongly recommending is related to the use of masks in indoor settings. We have plenty of evidence now to demonstrate that masking is effective and does work in decreasing the spread of COVID virus. In a time when we're surging around, and that surge is around us, and half of our population remains unvaccinated, we're starting to see more and more breakthrough cases, as I mentioned, and it's more urgent for us to return to masking indoors in public or group settings, regardless of our vaccination status. So our local public health advisory that we issued a few weeks ago is recommending those who are age 2 or older in our community, whether you're vaccinated or not, to resume wearing masks in indoor settings that are public settings or large group settings especially. And then any community events that are occurring, if they involve indoor spaces, we're recommending them to post signage and to encourage or require their customers or attendees to mask indoors as well. And certainly for schools, childcare, and employer settings, including county government, we would have the same recommendation for indoor masking policy. Some additional updates as to what's been going on. From a testing perspective, we've rolled out the drive-through at the Behavioral Health Hub, which was formerly PNC Bank, off of Great Mills Road, and had a busy day yesterday with our first day. And are really glad to be able to offer that to our community. And again, thank you to the support from the Housing Authority, Chris Bologna, Dr. Bridget Lugum, Commissioner Morgan, and many others who have supported making this drive-through testing and future vaccination site a reality for this community. We do have a drive-through as the option there, but there's also a walking bicycle lane as well. And the reason for making sure we have something available in that community is because we do have higher rates of individuals who don't own cars. And we want to make sure testing is readily accessible to them as well as vaccine. A couple updates on the vaccine front. We'll go to the first. Good. Go to the next one.
To the website?
Please.
Okay.
The next slide, actually.
Sorry.
Thanks. That's okay. Thanks. Our digital vaccine card, which we rolled out a few months ago in partnership with Pinpoint, the Vaccine Check program, it's available for free for all SMC St. Mary's County residents. We've now also expanded it to be available to those who live in Calvert and Charles County but work in St. Mary's County, and then also students at St. Mary's College of Maryland, regardless of their home jurisdiction, are now able to access that digital health record. And it's available in both English and Spanish now.
Dr. Brewster, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I did try to do this. I filled it all out, but I never got a response. Is there somebody I should call? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have that on our website, and I can send that to you by email, sir.
Thank you. I had
There's
the same
a
problem.
link. Say again?
I had the same problem.
Okay, we'll send you that link.
I couldn't get it to work.
Yeah, there's a link you can for customer service. So sometimes people's records may not be lining up with what they input, and so they have to have somebody manually go through that
Right,
and
thank
send
you.
that to you. All right, if we go to the next slide, please. The booster doses. This is big news for this week. We have now approval for booster doses or third doses of vaccine, and anybody who's received their full series of Moderna vaccine or Pfizer vaccine who has some level of moderate or severe immune compromise. And on the side of the slide here are a list of some of those conditions. There may be other conditions, though, and so if residents have questions about whether or not they're eligible for a booster dose, I would encourage them to talk to their doctor. If you received Pfizer as your original series, you would be eligible for a Pfizer booster dose. And so those are individuals who are age 12 and older. If you received Moderna as your original series, then you would be eligible for a Moderna booster dose. And again, those are individuals 18 and older.
So, Dr. Brewster, to be clear, everyone does not need to have a booster. Only those things with the immune compromised position that you list here on the left should be getting the booster, but if you feel fine, you had a shot, you don't have to go get a booster.
So the authorization for booster doses right now only extends to for the use in people with moderate or severe immune compromise. The FDA certainly is reviewing other conditions or even occupations or age groups that might potentially be authorized for boosters in the future.
I just don't want people to get concerned, well, I had 2 shots. Everyone at this table's had the Pfizer. I think every one of us feels good, so we don't have to go in and get a booster.
So the booster dose is recommended for anybody with a moderate or severe immune compromise. So if you have one of those conditions or some level of immune compromise like that, we do recommend that you get a booster dose.
Thank you.
The booster dose should be at least 28 days after your second dose, whether it was Moderna or Pfizer. So at least about a month after your second dose is when you would be eligible for a booster dose. We are planning a booster vaccine clinic on Sunday, August 22nd at Great Mills High School from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And of course, thank our partners at the Sheriff's Office and Department of Emergency Services, DPW, and EMS for their ongoing support and partnership with the Health Department on rolling out these mass vaccine clinics.
Could I ask you a weird question? We just opened up the facility on Great Mills Road at the PNC Bank. Why are we using Great Mills High School when we have the facility down there on Great Mills already?
So the PNC Bank facility isn't intended to process, hundreds or thousands of people through at that volume. I mean, it's not that kind of property. We don't want to clog up all those main artery ways with pileup of traffic. We have those mass vaccine sites staged at Great Mills High School and Hollywood Volunteer Fire Department and ready to go when we need them because they're much better at removing the impact on those major thoroughfares. The PNC or the Behavioral Health Hub drive-through is really intended more for daily use and the kind of volume that we see with daily access to vaccine and testing, not for a mass event.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting, I apologize.
That's okay.
2 things. First off, so if you show up on the 22nd, you don't have to say, I've had an organ transplant, I'm an active cancer patient, I'm a stem cell. You don't have to say you're one of those. You can just...
If you register for a booster dose, then
have to...
you answer questions on that.
Gotcha.
We will not ask for a verification of, or you to show your medical records or anything like that. We encourage people to talk with their healthcare provider just to make sure, or if they know that they're eligible, to go ahead and register for a booster dose.
I guess where I'm coming from this is, I'm not me personally, but I know people who are a little older, late 60s, 70s, and 80s, and they're concerned, but they haven't had any of these specific things, but they're just thinking because they're older, they may be immune compromised, and should they get a booster?
Yeah.
So they won't qualify, or they won't.
So at this time, they're not recommended to get or authorized by the FDA to get that booster dose, but those age groups and healthcare providers and other kind of groups who receive vaccine fairly early on and may have higher risk are definitely being looked at for future recommendations for booster doses.
Could be later, not now.
Yeah.
Second question, though, is you just mentioned that this PNC site's not set up for, and I think you used the term hundreds of thousands of vaccinations. Do you expect that type of numbers to be, or let me ask you this. I remember when it first started, the lines at Hollywood were really long, and all these places were long. Are you expecting thousands of people to show up for these vaccines?
So we're not expecting thousands of people on the Sunday event. We are expecting hundreds in a small time frame. And based on our calculations, based on the questions people answered when they registered to receive vaccine doses through the health department previously, we're expecting at least 1,500 or so people are eligible for a booster dose. And the national estimate is about 3 to 4% of people in a population have some level of moderate or severe immune compromise.
Okay, so we do have that population with these things of about 15. That's good to know. Are you also seeing an increase in the number of people who were unvaccinated who have now said, hey, look, I better go get that vaccination?
Yes, since we've seen the issue with the Delta variant over the past handful of weeks, we are seeing more and more people opt to begin their vaccination series on a daily basis. And those are the individuals that we're handling primarily through our Leonardtown Health Department office. And then in a couple weeks, we'll also open up access through the PNC drive-through.
You don't see yourself going back to Hollywood and Firehouse with that?
We do. We're going to need to, as additional recommendations come out for booster doses.
Okay.
As the FDA gives full authorization, we do expect there to be an uptick. And of course, there's that 0 to 11 group of kids, the 0 to 11 years of kids who we're waiting on approval for them. So once they get approved, we do see a need for mass vaccine site.
So you'll be opening Hollywood again?
Yes, we have some dates already planned, and we're just kind of watching the news and waiting for these things to happen before we roll that out.
Okay, well, I know they're having a carnival.
Yeah, it won't be during the carnival. That's why we're holding, actually, that's why we're appreciative of the partnership with the public school system to be able to use Great Mills High School on that day, because I think that's one of the carnival days, actually.
All right, well, thank you.
So the thing of it is, if you're not sure if you're in this immune compromise eligibility, you should call your doctor and let him or her verify.
Yep, and if your doctor recommends you get the booster dose, then you're welcome to register.
Right.
Also, a lot of our pharmacies and doctor's offices
Not sure,
can provide
call your
those vaccines.
doctor. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
absolutely. Don't call the health department, though. Call your doctor. They know your medical
doctor.
history.
No, I'm saying call your doctor.
And talk to them.
Right.
So the ultimate message coming out of this, of course, as we're dealing with this Delta variant surge around us, is please get vaccinated. Whatever people pay attention to, social media, nationally, et cetera, it all comes down to what's here in our community. And this community has traditionally, historically, always pulled together to do what's right for each other. And we know that vaccination is what we need to improve in order to make an impact here in the county. So I just plead with every single person in this county who's eligible for a vaccine to please go ahead and get vaccinated for our whole county.
And I tell anybody out there, I had the COVID in August of 2020. I did get my vaccine in February of 2021. And I really don't think I have any of these difficulties she just mentioned on slide 8. I may have had brain fog, but I probably had it for years. So I'm not really concerned about that too much. But everything else, I feel fine. I grew no additional appendages anywhere, as I found so far.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to go ahead and get this done. There's been millions have done it already. And I think it's, for us, it's safe in our county. Just by this record you just showed me, the ones that are unvaccinated are the ones that are having the problem.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are getting sick, going hospitalized, and dying. So please, get your vaccination.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'm
And you
sorry.
actually raise a really good point, and I'm glad you relayed your story. Even if you've had COVID infection before, natural immunity is not as strong and as specific, or even, as far as we know, as long-lasting as vaccine-related immunity. And so even if you've had COVID, we still recommend you go ahead and get the vaccine to give you that targeted, specific, stronger immunity that vaccines afford. If you've had monoclonal antibody treatment for COVID, then we recommend you wait a few months after receiving that before getting your vaccine. Otherwise, you can get your vaccine when you're completed your isolation period for COVID.
Before you leave, I want to tell you, you're doing a great job, and thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
would say to you, I found this report very interesting, and the fact that you do talk about the number of people who are hospitalized, 18 unvaxxed, 2 fully vaxxed. That's different from what we used to hear when it was always like, well, we can't tell you how many people are in the hospital. So I appreciate that. And the only other thing I would say, and I'm sorry to be like a broken record, we didn't get this till first thing this morning. And it would be nice to have it like a day in advance or something. I know
Sure.
you're
We do
busy.
the data analysis Monday afternoon. And unfortunately, my day got a little busy with outbreaks. We're managing 13 different outbreaks right now, so I wasn't able to attend to it until last night.
better, this commissioner better as a Board of Health member if I can just read it in advance of having you
Sure.
tell me about it as I look at it. Thank you.
Yeah, I usually don't have the data until Monday afternoon.
Okay.
So that's why I usually don't send the slides since we present Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Well, if we could get it, what I do is Thursday morning, I have a staff meeting, and the directors are required to put their information for the next Tuesday's meeting into board docs and have it available. If it's not there, I feel the commissioners can't make a good decision. I kick it off to another week or two later, or maybe next month, whatever it might take. So what I'm asking is that even if, I know the data is changing rapidly right now, but if we could get this, so if we can get it in board docs, get it to the other commissioners so we all can look at it and read it. And if you have changes within that 5-day window before we meet again, just bring a sheet in saying these following changes were done.
No problem.
And that's the only thing. I know you're updating these things to be, continuously updated, which our people need to know this. And I agree with it. And I sort of agree with your every 2 weeks now versus every month. And I'm talking about the other commissioners, if that's what they want or not. But I would like for you to give me this on Thursday morning at the latest, this package.
I can give you something, and then I'll send the update.
Yeah, and then you can update
night.
that Tuesday morning if
Sure.
it's some changes made, because I want to give the commissioners a chance to be able to read, just like what Commissioner Hewitt said, to look at everything and have good questions for you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay,
And you're
thank
always
you.
welcome to call, of course.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
one really specific question about Delta that you might not be able to answer, but and that's okay if you can't. The big differentiator, one of the big differentiators with Delta versus regular COVID is the viral load and how
Yes.
significantly higher the viral load is with Delta. With original COVID, there was a period of time, they would say 2 to 14 days where you're contagious, being that if someone's exposed to COVID, the viral load isn't high enough within that first 24 hours that you can really spread it. Do we know that with Delta? Do we know, so if I'm exposed to Delta, does it take 24 hours or
Right.
48
So
hours?
that's an excellent question, very astute. So it's 2 to 14 days to incubate the virus. So it takes 2 to 14 days after you've been exposed to develop the virus to a level that might, start developing, you might start developing symptoms, or, and typically it takes, for PCR testing, it might be 4 to 5 days after exposure when you start seeing PCR testing come positive. Yes, so the early indications are that Delta is stronger and faster. We haven't changed the incubation period of that 2-day onset yet, at least that hasn't been changed nationally based on the data that's coming out. But we are seeing people get sicker and earlier on, perhaps maybe at that 4-day mark or definitely by the 5-day mark, start to show symptoms.
Okay. Thank you.
And Commissioner Hewitt, just to speak to your point about hospitalizations, the hospitalization data I was showing was for hospitalizations of St. Mary's County residents in any hospital in the state. That has been on our website. We have hospitalization data on our website for several months. What was hesitant to be shared before because of confidentiality reasons was specifically about numbers of people in MedStar St. Mary's Hospital.
Oh, so this isn't MedStar
No.
St. Mary's, this is across the state.
This is for St. Mary's County residents, and based on records from hospitals across the state.
I had it earlier, maybe I could figure that out and
Sure, I got your point.
I kind of like to process a little bit. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I
the
did
main
speak
thing
with
is get
Dr.
your
Michaels
shots.
this morning, and St. Mary's Hospital has seen an uptick in COVID cases, so specifically.
He can't tell you that.
No,
That's
he can
HIPAA.
tell me that.
He
He can't
tells
tell
you-
me.
He can't tell you
tell me.
numbers, right? I mean, he can't tell you numbers of beds in the ICU and so forth, because then that does compromise confidentiality of people in those settings.
Okay, it's confusing.
Understood. Yeah, I'm happy to invite him back. I know he came before to explain that to everyone, but I'm happy to invite him back if you think that would be helpful.
Good. Well, thank you, Dr. Brewster, very much for your information. And as commissioners, you want us to come back every 2 weeks or keep it monthly?
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
right now.
Hopefully this surge will surge in.
Well, we are entering indoor season, which is partly why it's so critical that we resume masking indoors. And
into our season.
as the weather changes, people move indoors more and they congregate more indoors.
Oh, I'll get you. Fall and winter.
Yeah, fall, winter, yeah. So that's certainly what we're keeping an eye on as we move forward and may contribute to the ongoing surge as well.
Well, a lot of I will say this, the airlines went to, there's no seat separation I flew back with 180 people in this aluminum tube from Salt Lake City back to BWI, and I was sitting right next to, now they're required to wear a mask. Everybody had to wear a mask and cover your nose and mouth. But that didn't change. The airports, you have to wear a mask all through the airports. I went on a tour. They normally have 45 people. They only had 23 because they required that you had full vaccination. If you couldn't prove that, you couldn't go. And then the buses we were on the same way. The buses were, the policy was full of masking, which I don't mind doing myself. I think it's fine. That crowd of people. So I encourage people, if you're in a crowd, my gosh, you better start putting your mask on again. I don't know. That's the best we have right now, and it seems to be working. So
That and vaccine.
yeah, definitely the vaccine. I agree with you. I think people are foolish that keep saying that FDA hasn't approved it yet. Come on. I think it's going to be approved, and it's got everything going for us. Your figures just showed those who are not vaccinated are the ones that are getting it.
Yeah.
Almost 99%. So get vaccinated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Commissioner O'Connor?
Dr. Bruce, to the question that, we spoke yesterday, and thank you for the information, so I was able to understand a lot of what was going on today. The question that I have is based on our conversation yesterday, what are your recommendations for county government specifically? As I discussed with you that, I don't feel the necessity to push any mask mandates throughout St. Mary's County. I believe that people should be able to make the right decision. I believe that they've lived a year under the pandemic, so the when and where is something that they're capable of doing. So what I would like to know from you is, how do you think best, as a doctor, we can continue the continuity operations in a safe and efficient manner for our employees here
Yeah,
in county government?
and thank you for raising that, and you said it just right. It's about safety of your employees and safety of the public, which needs to be able to access county government services. These are critical infrastructure, essential services, and many of these services involve some level of in-person interaction. And as an employer, as I stated before, there's a financial implication as you keep losing workforce to isolation and quarantine and so forth as well. For all employers, including county government, we are strongly recommending, because we know it works, policy to require masking indoors in public settings for anybody age 2 and older, unless you are actively eating or drinking.
Okay, and then, of course, there's been lots of rumor about, or you've seen policy across the nation about mandatory vaccinations. I did discuss with you my opinions on that. I do believe that there's another methodology to being able to have people in no contact positions that, for whatever reason, they may not be able to get vaccinated for whatever medical conditions they have, and/or, there may be a religious belief that they have, all sorts of different things, versus saying, get vaccinated or you're getting tested every Tuesday. Show me your vaccination card. I don't believe in that portion of it, but is there a plan of action that you may be able to put together and bring back, should this continue on the trend that it's doing, that, and work with the county administrator, however, so we can prepare for a possibility of something along those lines, what that may look like, no contact, and then, put the people that are vaccinated up front dealing with the masking and things like that. Could you do that?
Sure, I'd be happy to continue those conversations, and certainly we'll talk with Dr. Bridget and her team about that. Again, it goes back to the safety issue, and Commissioner Guy said it best, with clearly the impact of vaccination is significant, and it's significant not just for the individuals involved, but for our whole community. And so we are recommending that workplaces do what they can to encourage vaccination, and we know that vaccination policy that asks employees to get vaccinated or to get weekly tested if they're not fully vaccinated is effective. It's been effective, and many workplaces are starting to move in that direction or have already implemented policy in that realm. So I would recommend county government to consider policy to that effect. I think it would be effective, but there may be ways, strategies to look at, again, with the ultimate goal in mind, which is optimizing workplace and public safety. With that goal in mind, there may be options to encourage teleworking in individuals who are not opting to get vaccinated and want to avoid the weekly testing.
And I think.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I think Dr. Bridget talked to our directors yesterday about this, and we do have a pandemic policy in our HR, and encourage them to put the plexiglass back up. Some of them had already taken it down, put it back up, and mask. And we've already done that in our government right now. It's working now, so we haven't gone to full masking yet, but we've encouraged it. It's just like getting the vaccination. I definitely encourage it. Get the vaccination. But we can't make, like you said, like Commissioner O'Connor just said about religious belief and everything else. And these people who believe that it's not FDA approved. I couldn't believe the 3 people I talked to this weekend that said that. And I said, okay, that's a choice. And unfortunately, your data here, we've just shown it again. It's going to be on TV and at the news. If you're not vaccinated, it's more likely you're going to get this. So that's a choice you have to make. And so I think it's a terrible choice to make. I get the flu shot every year. And in the military, we were required to get it. For 26 years in the military, I got the flu shot. And I continued after that because I believe it works. And I believe this COVID shot would work too. So get vaccinated, people.
It has been working, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Brewster, the news flash just came up on my phone. It says, U.S. experts are expected to recommend COVID vaccine boosters for all Americans regardless of age 8 months after they receive their second dose this year. The announcement could come as soon as this week.
Yeah, we're monitoring closely. But we do have some dates picked out already for Hollywood Volunteer Fire Department.
Good.
And we have a contract in place with them as well to restart operations there in September.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, get a shot. I agree. Get a shot.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Okay, I need to have a motion to go back to Commissioner.
I move to adjourn as the St. Mary's County Board of Health and reconvene as the Commissioners of St. Mary's County.
Second.
First, second, all in favor? Aye. Ayes have it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you again, Dr. Brewster. Well, I think right now we go right into County Administrator time. Dr. Bridget, it's on you now.
Thank you, Commissioner President Guy. Commissioners, first I draw your attention to the draft agendas for August 24th and the 31st. On the 24th, you have 2 proclamations, one for Child Support Month and one for Women's Equality Day, and a commendation for Alice Allen's retirement. On the 31st of August, you have a proclamation for Suicide Prevention Month, and you have a closed session scheduled for litigation. For today's business meeting, you begin with item 4B with the Circuit Court, with the Maryland Office of Problem Solving Courts Award for the Adult Recovery Court Program and Family Recovery Court. Linda Spatz, and Judge Stanalonis is presenting this morning. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Judge.
Morning. How are you all doing?
Very good.
Yeah,
Very
the
good.
all-stars here.
Supposed to have a jury trial, but it fell out, so I had some time this morning, and
It's a palm on your hand this
It's
morning.
good to see you, sir.
Good seeing you.
good to see you all as well. So this morning, I think, is to ask if you all will please accept the Office of Problem Solving Court grant. I'm happy to answer any questions or give a brief description of the program if you would like. Essentially, this is money that we have applied for from the state. It's been approved, and it's to fund our program here in St. Mary's County. And you, the county commissioners, have been generous enough for all of these years to also provide support for our program in a matching grant. And all of that money goes to support citizens here in St. Mary's County who have substance abuse and addiction issues and who are in the criminal justice system. And we're trying to stop the cycle through the criminal justice system.
How many years has this grant been continuing?
So the program, the adult program started in 2009, and that was with Judge Abrams. Just so that everyone knows, the program is consisting of the court, the prosecutor's office, defense attorney. We have a treatment provider, parole and probation, the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Department and Detention Center, as well as our own staff, a case manager, and a program coordinator. that is our team. And so we meet pretty much weekly to discuss the participants in our program, to review applications from other individuals who want to join the program, and to hopefully successfully graduate those people who come into the program.
I've been to a couple of the graduations, not your graduation, sorry.
Sure.
But the graduations. And the most impactful thing for this commissioner is what I see from the family members of the person who's gone through the program. They are so relieved that they hopefully have hope that their lives, along with the life of the person who's involved, will be improved because they've gone through so much. The late night calls, the calls to the hospital, the calls to the jail, and worried about. So thank you for what you're doing.
And I just want to tell you, I've been with the program since it started in 2009. I was the prosecutor before I was the judge, and graduations still are the best part of the program, not just because somebody has successfully completed it, but because each participant talks about their own experience. They tell you about their life before the program. They tell you about their life during the program and what they hope to accomplish when they leave the program. And as you indicated, their family and their friends are there to support them. And each graduation just sort of is an inspiration to keep me going with the program so that hopefully many more people have that opportunity.
Very good.
I
Great
move to
program.
approve, I'm sorry.
I said it was a great program.
Thank you.
I move to approve the Adult and Family Recovery Court Award, MD 2025, from the Office of Problem-Solving Courts on behalf of the Circuit Court Adult and Family Recovery Court Programs in the amount of $269,000, and approve the related budget document amendment that includes county funding of $186,211 for a total of $455,211, and authorize the Commissioner-President to execute the related documents.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge.
Everyone
Thank
have
you,
a great
Judge.
day.
Thank you very much.
And
Good seeing you
also-
again.
Also from the Circuit Court is the Adult Drug Court Program Subrecipient Agreement with Project Chesapeake. Judge Danilonis, would you like to present this one as well? Thank
That you got time.
So just so everyone knows, Project Chesapeake is our treatment provider for our program, and they handle all of our both outpatient and inpatient treatment. They're pretty much our exclusive provider while people are in the program. So I think this is to approve funding for them.
All right, I move to accept the subrecipient agreement for the St. Mary's County Health Department, Project MD 2294, in the amount of $84,607, and authorize the Commissioner-President to execute the related documents.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Yes, you are.
You can go now.
And Commissioners, item D is from the Sheriff's Office with the Federal Fiscal Year 2022 Cooperative Reimbursement Agreement application for the Child Support Grant. Lottie Bell, Fiscal Manager, in person presenting, and I believe Lieutenant Simons is on Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners and Dr. Bridget. This FY22 grant application will reimburse a portion of the expenditures for 4.08 full-time employees, as well as a vehicle, equipment, fuel costs, and supplies for the child support unit. This request is for approximately $788,000, which includes $490,000 federal and $297,000 county funds. This grant and the related positions are included in our FY22 approved budget. A budget amendment would be needed at the award stage to increase the grant and county funding. Do you have any questions for Lieutenant Simons or myself?
Did you say there was going to be a county match involved?
Yes, sir.
$297,728.
So what's the 84,006?
I'm sorry, what?
Am I on the
That's the
wrong
one we just
page?
did.
Oh,
Yeah, we're on item D.
got it.
Yep.
Sorry, I had the wrong
You're
document.
good.
Apologize.
No worries.
Got it now.
All right, I move to approve the FFY 2022 Cooperative Reimbursement Agreement application for the Child Support Grant Project US 2217 from the Maryland Department of Human Services for child support enforcement in the amount of $490,375 federal and $297,728 county funds, and authorize the Commissioner, President, and Sheriff to execute and submit the related documents.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bell.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item E is from the Department of Recreation and Parks with the FY 2022 Program Open Space Grant Award. Mr. Shepard, Director, presenting this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you.
Morning, Mr. Shepard.
Morning. On July 28th, the Maryland Board of Public Works approved program open space funding for two of our recreation and parks projects. That's the lighting and the tennis courts at Cecil Park in the amount of $202,500, and as well as completing our land preservation parks and recreation plan in the amount of $25,000. So I'm seeking your approval to accept those program open space funding.
It's pretty simple.
Good money, well spent.
I move to approve the fiscal year 2022 program open space funding for the Cecil Park Athletic Ice, $202,500, and land preservation parks and recreation plan grant, $25,000, and authorize the Commissioner President to sign the two related budget amendments.
Second.
I have a first and second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Keep them grants coming.
Come on.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item F is a presentation from the Department of Economic Development on the Airport Innovative District update. Mr. Casalemas, Mr. Dietrich, and Mr. Muldrow, our consultant, will be presenting this morning. Good morning.
This is information only type briefing?
Yes, it is information only.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Bridget. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
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 As Dr. Bridget said, we have Trip Muldrow with us from the firm of Arnett Muldrow. He'll be able to talk in a minute here. Today's item is informational only, and also John Dietrich is here, excuse me. Today's informational only, mainly going to be focused on the brand identity effort that Mr. Muldrow led us through. So we have a few, it looks like we have a lot of slides, but we're going to go through them pretty quickly, so don't be discouraged. Next slide, please. As you know, the county designated the area within and around the St. Mary's County Airport as an innovation district several years ago. A couple definitions here, but basically an innovation district is a cluster of companies and institutions and other mixed uses that really fuel innovation. Next slide. So when we talk about an innovation ecosystem, which an innovation district is, we talk about economic assets, physical assets, and networking assets. You know, at the airport, we have the University System of Maryland at Southern Maryland. We have Techport. We have the UAS test site. We have aviation companies, industrial companies, because the boundary goes up and includes the Airport View Drive and those companies also. We have some retail, if you go out to the 3 Notch Road. We have housing, and of course, we have the St. Mary's County Airport. What we're missing a little bit or lacking or trying to improve is networking assets. We don't really have enough places to gather and exchange ideas, because the idea of Innovation District is really this collaboration and networking, and we need to have more places to do that. And we're working on that. Next slide, please. So a little over 18 months ago, we came forward with a Innovation District Master Plan. We had a consultant come. He had some funding from the Metropolitan Planning Organization. They put together a great master plan for the Innovation District. It was developed with stakeholders, and we had great support and was very, very well received. And that's going to guide us as we move forward with the Innovation District and try to make progress. Next slide, please. So private sector progress, if you've been to the airport, you've seen a lot of building in the past several years. Most of that is from S. Hunt Aero. I think Ken Reed is with us. Ken's been a great partner and collaborator. He's built 36 general aviation hangars, 3 hangars for UMD, a hangar for Pax Aero, is a list of all the things he's built there, 3 large commercial hangars, a large hangar recently for AirTech, and he has concrete in place for his last hangar, which will be another 12,000-foot facility. So a lot of work by Mr. Reed, just gets things done.
Yeah, Mr. Casalemas,
yes.
I want to say, S. Hunt Aero, Mr. Reed, thank God he came to St. Mary's County, or we got him down here.
Right.
But I would say to you, we may want to look at the future and see where we, Mr. Reed may want to retire to Florida or something. I'm not saying don't go anywhere, Mr. Reed. I know you're here somewhere. Please stay in St. Mary's County. But I want to, what's happened out in that airport in the time in the last, 8 years or since I've been sitting in this chair has been phenomenal. It's been transformational.
Right.
And I don't want to see that, for some individual to leave. I don't like things to be, point or sole source kind of, individual specific. So if there's some kind of a plan afterwards, it would be helpful for us.
And I think Mr. Reed's down to his last piece of land, so he's pretty much done. But there is vacant land at the airport area. I mean, the county owns land, and John Dietrich will talk about the county-owned land. I think we have 30 or 35 acres on the south and the west end, and plus some land on the north side. He'll talk about that. There's also private sector land. I think Robert Waldschmidt has 115 acres by the USMSM building. So there are pockets of land. And the master plan talks about how that land should be developed.
Good.
So we'd like to move forward with all that. And the next slide, please. So you guys have heard about the USMSM, the new SMART building. Construction is almost complete. It's an $86 million, 84,000 square foot academic and research facility. The grand opening is scheduled for October 15th. The governor will come down. And it really will be a catalyst for innovation. So there's going to be research, development, and teaching around autonomy. So air, land, and sea autonomous vehicles. I've been on a quick tour during construction. It's a phenomenal facility. Also, not on the slide, but we recently welcomed new tenants to Techport. We welcomed NOC AD with their tech bridges and their impacts. We also welcomed the Naval Air Service Consortium. And then John Dietrich, as I mentioned, will talk about the county progress at the airport. Thank you. Next slide, please. So from the master plan recommendations, next slide. One of our recommendations is about branding. And the consultant noted that when arriving at the Innovation District or only passing by the Innovation District should be easily recognizable. You know now if you go down 3 Notch Road, unless you know there's an airport there, it's hard to even know there's an airport there in a whole Innovation District. So the idea of the brand identity and letting people know what's really back there is really, really crucial. And they recommended that as one of the first steps. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Trip Muldrow. He is with the consultant company of Arnett Muldrow. They have worked in over 550 communities, over 40 states, and even out of the country also. And just we're lucky to have them. They've done work for the town of Leonardtown. And Trip's really led us through the stakeholder process, and he'll go through that process with us today. So thank you, Trip.
Okay. Good morning, Commissioners, and good morning, Dr. Bridget. It is a real honor and pleasure to be here. I'm always delighted to work in Southern Maryland and be in the neighborhood. We're honored to do this project. My background is not in advertising, it's in community and economic development, and that's what our firm brings to the table when we do branding. The process that we followed was thoroughly reviewing the master plan document because this was a recommendation of that master plan. We had an incredible tour of the Airport Innovation District. On that tour, we met with business owners, we met with educators, investors, and representatives of the airport itself. The things that are happening in the airport and around the airport are truly remarkable economic development projects. They're bringing people here to this county from across the United States. We had roundtable meetings with stakeholders. We had tourism and marketing experts, economic development officials, and certainly property and business owners and staff. We felt that it was critically important to meet with the Airport Advisory Board because, after all, this is the Airport Innovation District, and had a wonderful discussion with them. And then we were led by a steering committee that we briefed and debriefed during the process. And on the next slide, you'll see a list of the many, many people who participated. And I'll say even on the tour, there are probably people that aren't even listed that were there whispering in our ear and telling us neat things and showing us things that really struck us. Our steering committee was comprised of 9 representatives from across the sectors that you see. And then, again, we saw many many amazing things in the tour and in the roundtable sessions. Whenever we do branding, we do not believe this is an exercise where we go in a room and kind of do it on our own. We need that input to inform us as we do this process. And so whenever we do this, we look at existing brand elements. I'm a native South Carolinian. I lived in Maryland briefly myself, and one thing the two states have in common is we're very proud of our flags. And in this state, we wanted to look at some of the existing elements with the flag, the University of Maryland colors. I've joked with our committee that you'll observe that the university colors are slightly off from the flag, and these are the official colors. We also looked at the St. Mary's County brand identity, particularly the orange, which is the color of innovation. And then, of course, we could not be working in the Airport Innovation District without looking at the Navy's role. And while those of you who have been involved or are involved in the Navy may be debating the current Navy logo, we are sticking with what is true, and that's the color navy blue. We also look at the typefaces involved, and on the next slide you'll see basically, we look at the typefaces and the colors and land on a set of colors. Before we ever do, and more often than not, when people talk about a brand, they think of a logo. This is really so much more than that. We want to be able to really succinctly say what this district is about. I'm not going to read the whole thing, just a couple of slides. Aviation is proof that given the will, we have the capacity to achieve the impossible. Edward Rickenbacker. Aviation is in the DNA of St. Mary's County and is rooted even deeper in the history of this place, where exploration and discovery form the foundation of Maryland itself. It's here that military and civil aviation launched dynamic collaborations. Today, the connection between Naval Aviation Pax River, our centralized and modern airport, and our strategic location in the state and nation position us to take flight in ways never before imagined. Creativity is thinking up new things. Innovation is doing new things. Theodore Levitt. Innovation is the core of our mission. It's here that startup businesses thrive through creative partnerships. With an airport at our center, we offer unmatched access to the core of our national defense infrastructure. We are the place where pilots, engineers, veterans, scientists, explorers, technicians, students, and visionaries are vectors that intersect to take ideas from concept to practical solutions. This place is where innovation is born. This place is where dreams are nurtured. This place is where collaboration is cultivated. This place is Aero Park Innovation District, where ideas take flight. When we first met with the steering committee, we posed the question, should the name be the Airport Innovation District? And the steering committee said, perhaps not. And so we explored a new name, and Aero Park Innovation District ended up being the name. It is the only aero park in the United States of America, except for a subdivision in Menominee, Wisconsin, that has 15 houses in it. And so you are now the home of the only one of its kind. The logo that you see here takes the color orange from the economic development logo, the color red from the state flag, navy blue and cyan blue of the sky, and creates an arrow, and we test that going all the way through the different applications of the brand. We're truly excited to be a partner with the county in this undertaking, and we're extremely excited to give this preview to you as commissioners. We will be convening a meeting at noon with all of the stakeholders in our steering committee to share the brand and its implementation today. So it's been an honor to work with the staff and with everyone in this area, and we hope that you are particularly proud that Aero Park will be the only one of its kind in the United States right here in St. Mary's County.
Wow.
Very nice.
Thank you, Trent.
Sounds impressive.
Mr. Castellanos or Mr. Dietrich, living in this county and riding on that road every day, out in front there, they have that little pyramid-looking, there's a piece of art out there, but I think it says Wildwood Technology Park or something like that to that effect. Will this be replaced? Will that be replaced by this? Will that continue? Where will this sign be? Where would we see it?
So, Commissioner Hewitt, we're still figuring that out. That line, sign is owned by Robert Waldschmidt
Oh, okay,
for
okay.
his own property. He owns that little triangle. We do have county property a little bit farther to the north that we could put our monument sign there. We have located a location. We're still kind of in the beginning stages of that, but
I guess what confused me is, again, I traveled that road a lot.
Yeah.
And I know when they were doing that intersection there, and that took forever and a day, that they had that stormwater management pond there.
right.
And they were always kind of getting around that piece of art, whatever that sign may be called.
Yeah, and then he reinstalled it, I think. He took it out and put it back in.
Okay,
So-
well, this one will look better.
There is a county-owned sign that's on an even smaller piece of property directly adjacent to Mr. Waldschmidt's property. You may not have noticed it. It's pretty
Not the
small.
Swamp, there's a swamp right next to it.
Well, it's right next to his sign, and when the developer created that stormwater pond, they severed the electrical line to it. That's finally been repaired, so you may notice it now. It's
I'll
lit
take a
up
look
at
today.
night.
I'm going down that way today. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Dietrich has a few slides to update us on Public Works progress at the airport. John?
Thank you very much. Public Works and Transportation's job is the infrastructure, obviously. In this particular project, I think that the Innovation District Plan brought us in a much tighter focus on the idea that we got to tie things together. This isn't just about the runway. It's even more than connecting Airport Road, now called Aviation Drive. We don't have our signs up yet, but that's what we're going to do. Over to Lawrence Hayden Road, it's much more than that. It's connecting it to all the developable property in the area. Next slide. So the COVID kind of put a little bit of a crimp in certain things. We did have our Aviation Day proclamation today, of course. Back in 2019, when that happened, we had great plans for 2020 with the 50th anniversary of the airport. It kicked off at Christmas 2019 with Santa flying in on a helicopter, upper left picture, and then the Christmas market at the terminal gives you an indication of the energy that's there now. But of course, 2020, that picture in the lower right-hand corner, which shows the flyover to honor the hospital and medical worker and first responders, was really the main event of the 50th anniversary. So we're going to go well beyond that. Next picture. So the new driving force is the Innovation District Master Plan, and this branding study is a critical piece of that because it brings synergy to the connections between what's outside the fence and inside the fence. We're not losing our focus on inside the fence, but it brought into sharp focus why it is so important to deal with outside the fence as well, to make the airport great and also to make St. Mary's County great. Next slide. So talking about inside the fence, this is our current airport layout plan. This will be revised and updated because we now have a new airport consultant. This plan is virtually built out. On the left-hand circle and the note, you'll see runway lengthening and hangar development currently underway. So we'll show you an aerial of that shortly. So that's really the last piece of work in the current airport layout plan. All of that was critical to lengthen the runway, to be able to fly in slightly larger aircraft, also to help more easily accommodate aircraft like the DC-3s that we have on the airport that are currently there under waiver.
Mr. Dietrich, where are we on that runway lengthening?
I'll have a picture of that coming up shortly, and I'll give you some detail on where we are. We've got the good side and the not-so-good side of that right now with the construction. So the update of the airport layout plan inside the fence is definitely going to deal with the undeveloped property to the north, and how we can actually access it and build more aircraft-related facilities and airport-related facilities there. Again, though, the Innovation District Plan gives us some guidance about how the private sector can be involved in that, and also the people that live and work around there already.
Mr. Dietrich, on the orange area, I think I'm looking at it towards the bottom of it. Again, I'm going to heap praise on Ken Reed and another guy, Pat Weaver, out there. A couple of years ago, they took me for a drive, and they said, look, this west end, we've donated it to the county. It needs to have the infrastructure, the water and sewer there. So when Boeing or Northrop Grumman or some other big contractor may potentially want to come in and put a hangar or whatever they want to put there, that we can respond quickly. Are we there?
I think we're well on the way. I'm glad you asked that question. There's a couple pieces of that. We've got a conceptual plan that one of our employees has done to extend the roadway to provide the access for that. That will be turned over to the airport, our new airport consultant, AECOM, to actually make that a biddable document. The grading for the big square there, which is the apron that would serve the hangars, is already underway, and you'll see that in an aerial we'll get to shortly. You have funded us to build a hangar. There's possibility of probably 4 large hangars in that area. You funded us to build 1 hangar. We're working with economic development right now to figure out an RFP to bring a new developer in, if Ken isn't interested, and using either we'll end up with a county-owned hangar and 3 private hangars, or some kind of public-private partnership that'll share the resources. The way Ken built out his current projects, the water, the sewer, the IT, all of that is ready there to be plugged into. We've coordinated that very carefully with him.
Thank you very much for that, because I think his vision was, and I agreed with it, is if someone wants to come in, we don't want to say, hey, we can have that for you in 3 years.
Right.
Just hang around for a while. But I think if we can say we can have that for you in 3 months or 6 months, we get a better chance of getting those people.
Right, and that's why we're thinking that the RFP process with another public-private partnership is a good approach, because you want whoever the ultimate user is to be involved in actually laying out exactly how that's going to be implemented, rather than us going out there and trying to guess.
Thank you.
Yep. So next slide. So the next slide, the outside the fence piece, another part of that is bringing in the neighborhood. And fortunately, we're in a county where people love airplanes, and knocking on wood, we have virtually no noise complaints.
Well, I had one last week about this Harrier thing. Guy said it was right over his house for several minutes. That's not going to continue, is it?
The Harrier takes off on the runway. It does not go vertical. There's no facility for that to happen, which is also noisier. It does have to fly periodically to prove its airworthiness, and that was that, and it was over in a very short period of time. I apologize to that person, but it is an airport, and the Harrier is an aircraft, and it has to fly or it will be grounded. and it's an amazing historic artifact. It may be sold and it may be gone, and that's just the nature of the business at the airport. We do have small jets that fly in, and that may increase with the lengthening of the
Well, maybe what we could
airport, or the runway.
Sorry to interrupt you, but maybe what we can do is like the Navy does. On this date or this week or this time period, expect loud noises associated with the airport.
Excellent idea.
The Navy does.
Yeah, Allison's listening in, and she'll make a note of that, and we'll figure out the best way to accomplish that. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Dietrich, you should probably just put Monday through Friday during normal flight hours, or Monday through Sunday, normal flight hours, expect loud noises, because it's an uncontrolled tower. So, or maybe we can just put the NOTAM out there, but other than that, the only time that people aren't going to get loud noises from the airport are during the peak times that are in the NOTAMs that say it's limited restricted operations for noise abatements within the flight pattern. So maybe there's just a different type of way to get that out to people versus specific dates when the Navy does.
Well, I would say to you, Mr. Dietrich, because Mr. Thornton's point to me was, he doesn't mind the jets. He doesn't mind the D3, whatever that bigger plane is. What he minds is that Harrier with the engine pointed downward or whatever it does, and it just directs a lot of noise to the...
No, they can't fly that way here. Okay. And because they have to have a concrete pavement to take off vertically.
Whatever. He just was said that particular day was deafening.
It was.
It's an auto-airplane regardless.
Yeah, we heard it. Right. Yeah, sorry.
Can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I heard it flying over the office.
Thank you.
All right. So as part of bringing in the neighborhood, making the neighborhood feel a part of the airport, as well as fostering the innovation culture, we've got terminal renovation going on, which I'm sure you all know about. They're in the demolition phase right now. It's going actually pretty well. We have the kitchen equipment already in stock over at Building Services to be installed, and so that's it's going really well. The next slide just shows the people that were involved in that Young Eagles rally this year. A wonderful event, and again, it's that informal education that's so important. Next slide shows you the very preliminary side of the demolition when the electricians were in there disconnecting all the things that would be of danger to the crews that come in to do the actual work. But the work is well underway. All of those counters and so forth that were in there to support what was considered to be scheduled service have been removed, and that area will be replaced with open plan offices. So, in other words, that will help small firms get a foot in the work that's going on here. Next slide. So I tried to take a picture of the new building at the Southern Maryland University, the University System of Southern Maryland in St. Mary's County facility. I couldn't, it was too big to take a picture from the driveway. It stretches quite a distance. Huge building.
It's an airport. You should have taken the picture from the air.
That's right. And this will just be an incredible resource to develop what we need. And I had a recent meeting with Dr. Abel, who runs that facility. She and I and one of the representatives from the surveying and engineering community about developing also a civil and a surveying program, or at least offering courses there, because we're very short of engineers and surveyors. Even the base has trouble hiring. Next slide. Education and R&D equals job growth. Key piece. The next slide. With the airplane. R&D and surprising packages. So that's, I think most of you know about the DC-3s. They are 1940s vintage. They've been completely reworked, strengthened. They've had the piston engines replaced with turboprops, the fuselage lengthened, and a ton of research and development equipment mounted in them, so they can do all kinds of research work. And my favorite one is those pictures you saw of the Antarctic ice sheet breaking up. They were taken by that plane, and you can see the dents in the side of the fuselage where the ice, from the storm they were flying through was thrown against the fuselage by the propellers. So anyway,
Must have been an
incredibly
exciting trip.
cool planes.
Exciting trip for the people.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it's not the DC-3 from Casablanca, that movie. The next slide, infrastructure progress. Runway plus taxiway plus apron equals more business, plus more jobs, plus more opportunity. And that's really the key. We want to get it done. Next slide. If you drive down Lawrence Hayden Road, this is more or less the view you'll get. Not very inspiring. Next slide. You'll see some of the equipment moving around. There's another slide later that'll give you, sorry, that's a separate photograph that was in your package that gives you a better picture. To answer Commissioner Morgan's question about the progress of the runway, we've had 30 rain days this year, which has delayed things somewhat. We've also discovered what appears to be a domestic dump site. Fortunately, we've got a great team that we put together to develop a plan to eliminate it. We've got Maryland Environmental Services. We also have 2 different geotechnical engineers involved in testing labs, and we're going to mitigate that before we can actually fill on top of that. Most of this area is actually part of the runoff. It's not part area. It's not actually under what will be a runway space. So, but it is a challenge. Team's up to it. We've got the right people involved, and we'll take care of it.
In that regard, what you guys are doing out there is great, and I'm really happy to see the progress that's been made over time. But you just mentioned this domestic dump site and water runoff. Concerning in the future, and I've spoken to you, I've spoken to Mr. Hunt, I've spoken to Mr. Weisskopf about this, is Wildwood. And everything, obviously St. Mary's River, everything flows down through Wildwood and eventually gets to Johnson Pond. I'm really concerned as I'm watching, the storms back in there, how much flooding is taking place from not only the retaining pond or whatever it's called behind the shopping center, which apparently is owned by 14 different conglomerates, but also flooding back through other neighbors' yards. And as we develop this property, however it goes, I'm concerned that, this is good, but I don't want to see, hopefully, it'll be done long after I'm sitting here, that runoff is going to go back there and then start affecting the residences in Wildwood who are, paid a lot of money for their property and in many ways never expected the flooding to take place like it has been over the last couple of years.
As part of the lab work, we're catching water or seepage that might come out of that site. So That's part of our analysis. We're also very concerned about that. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, but also the 115 acres that we're looking to possibly develop, which will be adjacent to Wildwood.
Correct. All right, I think it's back to you, Chris.
All right, just a couple slides to wrap up here. Next slide, please. Report also talked about next steps. We have a meeting trip mentioned today at noon with stakeholders to talk about brand implementation, identity implementation. Next slide, please. And then we're going to talk about a monument sign, and we need to coordinate with the various stakeholders to get a monument sign up. And there's just some examples there that came from the report. Next slide, please. In terms of the master plan noted that we may have to change some zoning to do all the things that they recommended we doing, they recommend that we do. So some of the current zoning is not quite flexible enough, so we were going to talk to Bill Hunt and Land Use and Growth Management to talk about that. We need a little bit more flexibility. And that's it. We're here for any questions.
Mr. Castellanos,
Yes.
it's a great presentation. I love the branding. I think it's a great work. I'm glad you have this last section on implementation, because that's kind of key. We can come up with the greatest brand in the world, and if we don't implement it correctly, it's just money down the drain. So I look forward to seeing the signage and removing the clutter of signs that aren't effective and creating a really good strategy around that. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Colvin.
I will say that if you haven't been out there over the last few months, to the audience, that they've been having farmers markets out there, not just the winter indoor farmers market, but they have an outdoor farmers market that's been going on all summer, every 2 or 3 months, with the proceeds benefiting Sauterly. So when you see airport farmers market, it's usually on a Sunday, please stop out. The other thing, on August 28th is an unusual event that's going to take place out there, which is called the 700-mile-an-hour bourbon fight. And I'm not quite sure the details of the whole thing, but Tobacco Barn and Scott Sanders, in his ingenuity, he's the one that also took the bourbon up on the Constellation and had them pour a barrel of bourbon and let the boat rock back and forth and get the bourbon. But he's going to have a 700-mile-per-hour bourbon fight where they're going to do the high-altitude aging of bourbon in a barrel for the first time ever. And it's a fundraiser for the Semper Fi organization. So on August 28th, around 11 or 12, 100 tickets are available. Might be something pretty cool to go watch. I mean, anybody one of those bourbon drinkers, good idea. So anyhow, good ideas that are coming out there for implementation, good ideas on, what we're trying to do to get people drawn out there, the higher education center building going out there. So if you have a chance, just take a ride out and go look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan.
Mr. Castellanos, I want to commend you and Mr. Dietrich and everybody involved on this public-private partnerships. Again, H. Hunt Aero, these people have been wonderful. AirTech, this has been a good public-private partnership. Very, very productive, is the term I use.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I think in order to move forward with all the plans and all the ideas in the master plan, it's got to be a public-private sector and public agency relationship. There's still a lot of land owned by the public sector, the private sector, so need to continue to work with them. And, they are participating in everything. I'm always excited about the airport, and then we have these stakeholders come for these different meetings, and I'm always encouraged by how excited other people are, too. So they're showing up to these meetings. They were excited about the plan. They're super excited about the brand identity. So to have that continued collaboration is important and exciting.
Very good. Thank you all very much.
All right.
Great presentation, and it's good work from everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. And next is from the Department of Economic Development for the request of the Budget Authority to receive lease payments for the Techport. Mr. Castellanos presenting.
Thank you, Dr. Bridget. I almost forgot. So as we talked about, I guess it was a month or so ago, we have new tenants in Techport. We have NOC AD and we have the Naval Air Service Consortium. Those are paying tenants, which is different than the previous arrangement. We have a lease agreement with Eson Aero for $95,000 for that incubator building, Techport. Those two tenants will pay most of that. They'll pay $75,000 towards that rent, annual rent. And we don't have the budget capacity. It wasn't set up for us to accept the money, so we need to do a budget amendment to accept the money and pay it back out. So this is no cost to the county. It's just a accounting mechanism to accept the funding and pay Eson Aero.
Good with that, but you said that it was $75,000 going to be paid, and the rent's $95,000.
Correct.
Paying 20.
So we are paying 20.
Correct.
Were we paying that previously when it was with the University of Maryland?
We were paying them $450,000 a year. We paid them $1.35 million to take care of everything. So we were actually paying, there was no money coming in from the tenants that we got. University of Maryland got some money from the tenants, but we were actually covering all the rent through that grant.
Deal.
It was a much better deal. And I think it's really strong tenants. I mean, to have a NOC AD presence outside the gate, they're super excited about it, and they're bringing more and more people there, more events. So.
Always happy to have a better deal.
Yeah.
Now, do we have any additional leasable space, or will they take it all?
They're going to pretty much utilize all of it, but, we have a one-year agreement with them, so maybe after 1 year, they even I talked to Rick Tarr yesterday from NOC AD, and he was talking about maybe they'll even expand at the airport into a larger space at some point, so maybe they might outgrow their Techport space, depending on what happens after the year.
Okay. Be awesome.
Yeah.
Be great.
Great.
And just as a reminder, the commissioners did approve some additional funding in my budget to pay that $20,000 and some other things that come up during the year for that. Sometimes there's equipment that they need or some small things that we're covering in our budget to make sure that they have everything they need as tenants.
I move to approve the budget amendment decreasing the Commissioner's appropriation reserve by $75,000 to allow St. Mary's County to receive and pay the lease obligation to Eshan Aero for Techport and have the Commissioner President sign the related documents.
Second.
I got a first and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Castaneda.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item H is from the Department of Land Use and Growth Management with a briefing from the Solar Energy Task Force report. Mr. Hunt and Mr. Knight from Lugum are presenting this morning. And again, Commissioners, this is informational only. Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Hunt. Good morning, Mr. Knight.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm with Harry Knight, Deputy Director, who is staff support and facilitator of the Solar Task Force. Dr. Michael Kane, Chairman of the Task Force, and the members of the Task Force were sent links to today's meeting to participate remotely. Mr. Mike Thompson, a member of the Task Force, is here in person. The Task Force considered general principles to help guide future solar development, as well as specific recommendations designed to promote responsible development across all types of solar projects in the county.
Mr. Hunt, could you move closer to your microphone? Thank you.
Final report includes recommendations for residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, community, and utility scale solar projects. The final report includes recommendations that will be the basis for a solar ordinance for the county. Mr. Knight has prepared a PowerPoint to describe the findings and recommendations of the Solar Task Force. With permission, I would like to ask Mr. Knight and Ms. Casas to present the PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Knight, you got it.
One slide I did not include in the PowerPoint I would like to mention. We did come in under budget. We returned more than 20%. Nearly $11,000 back to the county administrator's budget. I presume it went back to the general fund.
We like hearing things like that. Thank you.
Solar's saving us money already. That's great.
Okay, next slide. So the Solar Task Force report addresses key solar concepts: net metering, accessory solar installations, community solar projects, and utility scale solar projects. Next slide. The Solar Task Force report also describes the state's role in approval of utility-scale solar projects and its ability to preempt local zoning decisions. The Public Utilities article requires the PSC, the Public Services Commission, to give due consideration to the county's position on the subject, the consistency with the local government's comp plan and zoning regulations, and any actions taken to address concerns raised by the St. Mary's County government. Next slide. The Solar Task Force created 7 principles as broad policy goals, and these are to help us as we move forward with zoning, permitting, or taxation proposals. So the Solar Task Force used these principles when developing the specific recommendations that will follow. Next slide. So these principles are improve quality of life, protect and promote economic development, protect important environmental and historic lands, encourage smart solar development, reduce air and water pollution and climate change, promote clear and transparent processes, and encourage equity. Next slide. So the Solar Task Force hired the Chesapeake Conservancy to conduct a study identifying sites in St. Mary's County that are most appropriate for solar development. The study also found that using these sites, St. Mary's County has the potential to provide nearly 10 times our estimated share of renewable energy per Maryland's updated renewable portfolio standard. Next slide. The Solar Task Force recommended, and the commissioners of St. Mary's County adopted on March 9th, a one-year moratorium on reviewing and approving utility-scale solar projects pending the passage of new zoning and regulatory requirements. Utility-scale projects produce more than 2 megawatts and are likely to have more than 20 acres of ground-mounted solar panels. Solar energy projects come in a wide variety of types and sizes. Due to the varying needs and characteristics of the different types, the task force believes the county should consider different land use and regulatory approaches based on these project types. Accordingly, the Solar Task Force has classified solar projects in 4 broad categories. Next slide. First category is residential accessory use solar. This is the common installation of solar that's been going on for years. Residential accessory use solar is installed at a private residence. All or most of the power generated is used on site. The solar panels are typically installed on the home's rooftop, but they can be pole mounts, ground mounts, or canopies. Next slide. So we do get some commercial, industrial, institutional accessory use solar installations, identical to residential, only it happens to not be at a house. Next slide. Community solar projects are 2 megawatts or less. They provide energy to 2 or more electricity customers within a utility service territory. And so our utility service territory is SMECO. Currently under SMECO's guidelines, we cannot have community solar, but the recommendation is to go ahead and prepare regulations in the event that SMECO changes their rules.
Well, what's the advantage of SMECO to have? It's contrary to SMECO's business model to have community solar, I would think.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah, I'd leave that to SMECO to answer.
And we're a co-op. SMECO's a co-op, so whatever benefits come to everybody else comes to SMECO too.
I'm not sure about that, but
I mean, if it was Acceleron or whatever owns that Calvert Cliffs bunch over there, you know, they're all stockholders. That would be. Anyway, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Just think SMECO is a good idea of a group that's owned by its constituents versus owned by stockholders somewhere.
I'm assuming it's just a technical current rule in place that could change. Okay, next slide. So utility scale solar projects are greater than 2 megawatts. The solar panels are typically ground mounted. These projects require proximity to high voltage transmission lines, typically within 1 to 2 miles, and permission from the Regional Transmission Organization, known as PGM, to use grid injection capacity at the project site. Utility scale solar projects must go through the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity review process by the Maryland Public Service Commission.
Let me ask you, I read this yesterday, or whatever I read it. When you say the Public Service Commission, now, I know what that is. I kind of had this general idea what they do. Now, a group like that, would they have, like, quote-unquote, veto power over something like this? Could they say it's not a good idea? What would be their role?
Well, they have to approve it at the state level. They have veto power over the county. If the county said it was not a good idea, the Public Service Commission can
override that?
Right, can approve it anyway.
If we say it's a good idea, can they veto our?
Conceptually. I think the main concern that we received from our consultant is that it's more likely that it would be approved by the Public Services Commission in spite of county concerns. So the primary goal of our regulations should be to steer solar utility scale development to our preferred areas,
right,
so that we and the Public Services Commission can approve them jointly rather than be at conflict.
It's kind of like working in unison.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Teamwork.
But the Public Service Commission also can override our zoning ordinances by law, I believe.
Exactly what I meant by saying they can override the county's concerns, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So our zoning ordinance should accommodate solar so that the solar companies are more likely to comply with our regulations and comply with the PSC, and we'll all get along well.
But I think a lot of our zoning laws already have in them tacitly approved the ability to do solar, am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. We certainly don't. The only thing preventing a solar approval today is the temporary moratorium.
We got that.
We'll deal with that later.
Next slide. So here are the SPECO transmission lines running through St. Mary's County, so you can get a bird's eye view of where preferred solar would need to be in order to easily upload to the grid. Next slide.
That's essentially 235 and Route 5?
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Makes sense.
So the recommendations for residential accessory solar is a definition, and then amend rooftop setbacks in the building code to accommodate more solar installation. No additional permits beyond those currently required for building and electrical inspections. Homeowner association restrictions and education to the public to encourage more solar installations. When it comes to homeowner association restrictions, try to make sure people are aware that they actually can't be upheld against residential solar installations. The residential solar assistance programs, any available, they recommend that St. Mary's County government get them up on the website for public usage. And the St. Mary's County government should consider possible incentives to encourage residential accessory installations. And there's no recommendation for changes to taxes. So next slide. So commercial, industrial, institutional, the same, specify a definition. The current zoning regulations regarding setback and height are fine. No additional permits should be required. And the county government, it's recommended, should do a solar survey of their own property to see where St. Mary's County government could install solar, and that there's no proposed changes for taxation. Next slide. So community solar is actually defined by the state, so their proposal is that we just adopt that verbatim. The proposed zoning regulation for community solar would be allow it in all zones, let it remain with the permit process. Setback and height requirements are fine as is. Buffer requirements, they recommend a modified type A buffer. They recommend we consider adopting decommissioning requirements. And they also think that during the review process, we need to make sure it does not conflict with historic or scenic view sheds. Next slide. No additional permits should be required for community solar. Community solar capacity is capped by state law, and so they recommend that the county government support any increases that come before the state legislature. And we should try to identify potential aggregators to come together to install community solar. And the St. Mary's County government may want to consider offering incentives for community solar projects. Okay, next slide. So utility scale solar. Of course, there'll be a definition. It's important that the developers are notified and communicate early in the process with St. Mary's County government. Of course, we have Navy development issues to keep in mind as we move forward with any proposed utility scale solar. The zoning regulations proposed would allow it in all zones except the RCA, LDA, and air installation compatibility use zone.
Good idea.
And we'll get to those siting categories a bit later.
Good idea.
The application process would now, for the first time, be the county's commercial site plan process. And the setback and height requirements per the current CZO are fine. Next slide. The buffer requirements, they recommend a modified type C buffer when adjacent to residential, a modified type A when adjacent to non-residential uses.
Excuse me, I know you're a technical guy and you're doing a great job, but when you say a CZO Type C buffer mean?
Well, so our current, I'm sorry for the abbreviation, so our current comprehensive zoning ordinance already specifies type A, B, and C buffers. And so rather than reinvent the wheel, we have buffer yard specifications that can be used, though they recommend that they be slightly modified.
So these are like building yard setbacks, like they'd have to be 50 feet back or something like that, is what you're saying?
The setback is the distance from property lines and right-of-ways and other structures.
Right.
The buffer yard is then planting of landscape, such as trees and shrubs.
Okay. Now, can you get, I shouldn't say get away with, can you use existing tree that's already there, like if you have woods there or something?
Yes, those exceptions are already in the zoning ordinance.
Okay, well, thank you.
What's cool is if you can get flowering flowers and their wildflowers for pollinators, which is a really good use of the land in between.
But what you don't have to do is kind of clear cut and then
Correct. We're not going to be Charles County.
replant, that's what I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah, the buffer yards provide some screening, some visual screening.
Sure.
Yeah.
I get it.
From adjacent
Properties, so the roadway or...
that are in a different use.
Well, I guess when I drive through Hughesville and I look over to my right and I see all those solar panels out there, look, I'm not trying to say they look ugly, but they're not attractive. Let me just say that. And I often wondered why they didn't make them put trees up in front of that so people don't have to look at that stuff. But if we can do that already, that's a win-win, is my opinion. All right, thank you.
Okay. So they do recommend that we have decommissioning requirements. Other requirements need to be considered to protect historic or scenic view sheds. No additional permits beyond those currently required for building and electrical inspections. They encourage the county to assert their right to participate in the CPCN process with the Public Services Commission.
Help us with that one, CPCN.
That was that certificate for public convenience.
And necessity.
Necessity, yeah. So
Which is PSC.
they have to file
That's the
that
other PSC thing? Okay.
and get that from the PS, yeah.
Yeah, it was
that
just one of
approval
those
from the
things I didn't
PSC.
quite have in my dictionary or vocabulary. Thank you.
And they do recommend that the commissioners offer incentives to encourage people to install utility scale in preferred areas.
Now, I did read about this pilot idea, which I agree with. And we've seen Calvert County do it with Dominion and do it with Calvert Cliffs nuclear power plant. Now, so if we had someone who wanted to come in and take a sizable piece of land and do something like a big solar farm and could meet all our requirements, what we would do is we would offer them an incentive of paying a fee in lieu of paying annual taxes, per se, on that. How would that work? When you ask for an incentive, what are you saying?
Yeah, well, and that's the only incentive that we could really name is a pilot, which is a payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
So it's a, call it a tax incentive. The county government would enter into a legally binding agreement that they'll pay conceivably less through this pilot program than they would in straightforward taxing.
Got it. And
for
that
a period of time.
That would be, okay, for, like they do over there at Dominion, they'll pay it for a number of years and then it retires or sunsets, whatever the term they use over there. And then these people would be able to use this facility or use this thing without having to pay annual property tax? How does that work?
Well, the details of the actual agreement would get worked out between the county commissioners and the proposed developer. But the concept is, if we want to steer people to the preferred areas, it may behoove us to offer an incentive.
I agree.
Yeah. So payment in lieu of taxes is a commonly used incentive program.
I'll be interested in the details.
Yeah, the devil's in the details. Remember, at the same time, with this whole new green movement, they're offering so many incentives and things out there for people to get into it. It's almost like a double redundancy. They get all the federal tax credits, state tax credits, and we give them a local tax credit. So there's some discussion about that.
I think I get it, Mr. Morgan, Commissioner Morgan, and I like it. And the point is, I'm very excited about this because I think it gives us a chance to take some contaminated, challenged properties in this county who have tried to do things with their property and have been denied for multiple reasons, and allow a win-win I just want to make sure that we put everything in place to make it happen, that we don't put things in place to have things that make it not happen. That's what I guess I'm saying. All right, thank you.
Next slide. So utility scale solar siting was then broken into 4 categories. A is the areas with no or limited county jurisdiction. B is the preferred areas that we were just focusing on, trying to steer it towards the preferred areas. C is protected areas. And D is allowed areas. Now, I want to point out there's no area that's proposed to be prohibited other than the RCA, LDA, and AQs that I mentioned earlier. All right, next slide. So A, the areas with no or limited county jurisdiction, Pax River Naval Air Station, Webster Outlying Field, any other federal lands. Of course, state parks and state-owned lands we have no jurisdiction over. The town of Leonardtown we have no jurisdiction over. And rural legacy areas we have limited jurisdiction. Once a property has fully engaged in the rural legacy program, taken the money, they themselves have signed an agreement where they are prohibited from having utility scale solar.
So that would be the Mattaponi and Huntersville.
Are the mapped areas, and then the property in them must actually engage through a contract to take those funds. So you can be in the mapped area and you're not prevented from accepting utility scale development.
Well,
but once you accept those funds, you've agreed that you will not pursue.
I get that part. It's all part of this easement idea. But this board has continually been requested to add acreage to say whether it be Mattaponi south of the base or Huntersville, which I've, again, been here 60 years, never heard of Huntersville, but it's somewhere. And that's in the northern part of the county. Is that true?
That is correct.
And these would not be allowed in those 2 particular legacy areas?
They would be allowed. The recommendation is that they would not be preferred.
Oh, okay.
That those areas should be protected.
I got it.
The next slide, please. So the Navy, of course, is paramount in our concerns with solar development. And the United States Navy is part of the county's technical evaluation committee, and they will always be part of the county's utility scale solar approval process. And a solar developer is strongly urged to consult with Navy leadership as early as possible. And if it falls within the 4.5-mile radius from the designated center of Patuxent River Naval Air Station or Webster Outlying Field, or within a 1-mile radius from any of the Atlantic Test Range theodolites, the Navy is very likely to request from the developer a glint glare impact analysis, a heat retention analysis, or I should say, an electromagnetic interference analysis. Yeah. Next slide. So this gives you the visual of the 4.5 radius around the center of Pax River, or the point that they gave us as the center. This exhibit actually came from Pax River Naval Air Station. Next slide. And this is the exhibit they provided us for Webster Outlying Field.
This is where they don't want it.
This is where they will very likely ask for those special studies. They did not say it's a no zone, but they said we're probably going to ask for more zone.
Well, in particular, when you look at the map, when you go down to Webster Outlying Field, if you go back to that earlier slide where the utility lines run, you don't even get to Webster Field, so it basically becomes Mox Nix. Pax River, different story. There with that 4.5-mile radius, which basically covers a lot of my district, part of Commissioner Hewitt's district, part of Commissioner Colvin's district along the way.
Good point. And the theodolites are shown here. Next slide. And
what is that term, theodolites?
It's like a radar beacon.
Okay.
That, Mike, is more up and down the F-18 test range that goes down up and down the bay, and the theodolites are spotters, for lack of a better word, when the airplanes are flying in there.
All right. Again, my Google wasn't up on.
I had to look it up myself. Okay, next slide. So this is an approximation of that 1-mile radius around those. Okay, next slide. So the preferred area, so where would we rather you put the utility scale, according to the Solar Task Force recommendation, is on county-owned lands and facilities, public school-owned lands, as Commissioner Hewitt mentioned earlier, voluntary cleanup program restoration sites, which we do have several in the county, brownfield sites.
Really?
parking lots or similar gray fields, and industrial zones. Next slide. So this map, the voluntary cleanup sites are the darker green triangle. And then the lighter green amoebas, I'm going to call them, for fun. When you zoom in on this solar siting map that we had developed, the actual parcel property lines will reveal themselves, but at this scale, they just kind of blend together. But so you can see that the preferred sites are required to be along the transmission lines. That's one of the qualities that you had to have to be considered preferred.
Common sense.
And so this gives you an idea of where those preferred sites would be. Okay, next slide. So the recommendation is that preferred areas, the initial site plan submitted would go to the Technical Evaluation Committee. Then it would go to, as a concept site plan, to the Planning Commission for approval. And eventually, the major site plan would be submitted back to the Technical Evaluation Committee agencies for final administrative approval by the planning director. And they do recommend that you consider offering an incentive such as a payment in lieu of taxes. Okay, next slide. So protected areas, by contrast. So protected areas to consider would be the resource conservation area of the critical area, MDE Tier 2 streams and catchments, Maryland Sensitive Species Project Review Areas, and Maryland Department of Natural Resources designated wetlands. Next slide. So it's the same process, except that here they recommend that it would require greater scrutiny, and the practical way to provide that extra scrutiny in accordance with our current administrative procedures is to make this become a conditional use.
But the Board of Appeals approval.
Correct. So initial site plan to the Technical Evaluation Committee, then it goes to the Board of Appeals for a conditional use hearing. Assuming that was approved, it would then proceed as a concept site plan to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
So there would actually be 2 public hearings.
All right, I read this last night. So that's different from what I'm used to. Excuse me. Spent time on the Planning Commission, 5 years in the Board of Appeals. Typically, what would happen, the Board of Appeals wouldn't get it until the Planning Commission denied it. Or if it was conditional use of something that it wasn't. But this talks about going to the Board of Appeals first and then the Planning Commission?
That's when it is a conditional use. So the Board of Appeals gets it after the Planning Commission when you're appealing the Planning Commission's denial.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah. But when it's a conditional use, our zoning ordinance says that it should go to the Board of Appeals for conditional use approval within 60 days of the TEC meeting.
Okay, well, what about the court process? Because there's always the court process available to whoever after the Board of Appeals process.
If someone is aggrieved of a decision by the Board of Appeals, they would then appeal to the circuit court.
You still have that
Correct.
available to you?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide. So the allowed areas, these are all the other areas that weren't included. And so they lack the optimal siting characteristics of preferred areas, such as environmental, historic, or economic, and they lack the environmental, historic, or economic characteristics of protected areas. And next slide. So the allowed areas would be a permitted use. It would go to the TEC. It would go to the Planning Commission for concept plan. It would not need a conditional use before the Board of Appeals. But it's not a preferred area, so they recommend that you do not offer incentives for these areas.
Okay. I'd have to understand that a little bit better, but...
Well, we have preferred areas and we have allowed areas. And so what do we offer the preferred to make them go there, an incentive? I mean,
So sort of, I guess I would draw the analogy this way. The brownfields, or those would be preferred areas. Joe's farm would have been an allowable area, if that's a good way to draw the analogy.
I got you.
But we would rather he go to the brownfield.
Agreed.
So,
Yeah.
so
Agree
what can
completely.
we offer you to make you go there?
Yeah, I got it.
Got it. Yeah, okay, I got it. Thank you.
Next slide. Questions?
I'll jump in. I want to thank Mike, Dr. Kane, who I think's on the phone or on the Zoom, and you guys for what you've done. I want to thank the commissioners for allowing us to go forward with, you know, I came up with the idea a number of years ago to do this task force. I recognize, you know, the state is very pushing real hard for green solutions to fossil fuels and things like that. And I think that we have to do our part in that. That being said, when I look at page 4, we had the report, you gave a summary. Page 44 of the report talks about what our requirement is. And I'm all for meeting the requirement. I'm not for being on the piece of organization that will provide 10 times our requirement at the end of the day to make up for, you know, the other counties. I do think that it's important, regardless of how we do this. There's, you know, tremendous discussion out there on the incentives on one side, but the decommissioning on the other, and that we have very stringent decommissioning rules out there. Because if you look at the statistics over the years, while we do have a lot of solar projects out there, they're not 100% efficient. I think, Mike, you can probably agree with that one. They're maybe 50%. They're going to decrease over time. When the time is done, what are you going to do with the what are you going to do with the property? What are you going to do with the solar panels, et cetera? Not just dump them into the ground. So the decommissioning is going to be very important to me as we move forward.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I think that the one recommendation that has been made there is wait till the comp plan is done. I can't support that. I mean, I know how fast the wheels of government work around here, and I know how it's going to take time for the comp plan to get done, and I don't think that it's going to be done anytime soon. Too. So I would request the board here, my commissioner board, I would be for releasing the moratorium, but at the same time, I'm not going to wait for the comprehensive plan to get done because of not only with the plan, but the hearings and how long it takes to get through. So that's sort of just what I would ask for. I do think that it is very important that we utilize, I think, what you said, Harry, earlier on, where would you put these things? And we had the map earlier, but, you know, we've listened, you know, when Commissioner Guy and I go up to Mako and we listen to these arguments, and I mean, they get some pretty passionate ones at the table over, you know, green energy, use of land, et cetera. And somebody left me a daily record from July 26. It says basically, drive to solar farms alarms Maryland counties. And that's a very true statement, particularly when you're looking at farmlands and things like that. But I do think that we would be really smart to do as the board recommends and push to those preferred areas. That would be the transfer station, or the dump, for lack of a better word. It would include the Morton Thiokol site, the old Morton Thiokol reverberant center up there in Hollywood, the old Southern Maryland wood treatment plant there on 235. Those are all, push it in there because it can't be developed. So before I would be willing to say, open up farmland as a, you know, not a preferred area, but an additional area, so let's, like you said, try to push it to the area that makes the most sense at the end of the day. How we would address incentives and things like that later, I don't have the answer, but I think that, you know, we should be moving forward on this because at the end of the day, we don't know what the legislature is going to do in Annapolis come next spring. You know, but with the reading of the newspapers and seeing the tea leaves, it's going to, the green movement is going to proceed at a hell-bent speed. So I would like to get a little bit ahead of it, but in such a manner that we're going to go to the preferred areas. We're going to use areas that, you know, aren't going to be utilized otherwise. These are extremely costly. I know that when Commissioner Guy and I go up there and we discuss things with the urban counties about this, you know, we'll put them on top of your government buildings or put them on top of your schools or things like that. Oh my God, the Heisman Trophy comes out. No, you can't do that to us, you know. Can't put them on top of it because it costs money. So it's easy to go to the rural areas and say, you guys pick up the tab and pick up the thing. But it's, again, the one time that Maryland uses, you know, a good formula system that gives us our formula for what we got to do versus, you know, dumping it on buildings. I always sat there and said, if the state's so interested, they should, you know, put solar on all the buildings up in Annapolis. Well, you should have heard that comment that I got back on that one. So when the state has to pick up the tab for their own requirements in the legislature, it's funny how, easier to say than to do. So, like I said, those are just, I want to thank you guys for what you did, Michael, Mike, the rest of the group. You did a great job. But I think that, I'd like to move forward releasing the moratorium. I'd like to get forward to coming up with the rules and things like that and push to those preferred areas versus putting into the additional areas. And
I echo Commissioner Morgan. County Attorney, Mr. Weiskopf, if you could have a seat. Do we need a motion to lift the moratorium, or do we just need general consensus from commissioners?
If I recall, the solar moratorium was based on putting a stop to a certain practice in our comprehensive zoning ordinance, correct? So it would have been done by ordinance. So if it was done by ordinance, we would need some public notice to do away with it. So we can bring it back to you, in the next 2 weeks or so.
I would say whatever it takes to do that. Would we have commissioner approval, at least a majority of commissioners?
Yes, well, definitely.
We'll certainly bring it back and put it on the agenda.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Now, second thing I'd like to mention is, we get these what's called agenda detail items with everything, and thank you very much, Dr. Bridget, whoever provided.
You're welcome.
And one thing it says in here that I thought was very important is preferred locations for ground-mounted solar projects include degraded or contaminated sites. Now, I spent 5 years on the Board of Appeals, and the least most important word in the dictionary is I. What I learned there, though, was that this thiokol plant, which was doing munitions back in the 50s and had a big explosion and killed a few people and this and that, has continually been a thorn in the side of whoever owned it. Back then, the Board of Appeals told the developer we wanted them to do magnetic resonancing on the 750 lots, again, of this 619-acre piece of property. He took us to court, and the judge said, no, he doesn't have to do that. And we had to grant the permit. Now, nothing's happened with that site. Now, what I would say is that site is ideal. I think it's the highest and best use for this type of thing because it's off the road. It's plenty of buffer. The land is not conducive to agriculture, which we've heard from the Farm Bureau, Jamie Raley, Mr. Raley, that, we don't want to take like the land down there where the Millicent Farm was, and that's agricultural, but who wants to plow a field that has maybe old munitions in it? So again, that site and the thiokol site, I think, is very conducive to this. Secondly would be the Hollywood wood treating site. I remember I was around when that Superfund people came in there and they burned that soil and almost turned it to talcum powder. It is very not conducive to farming or development. Now, several of these sites that you list here are in my district. I'm sorry to do this to you, but I'm going to claim district courtesy. I want you to call me, copy me, or if it's applicable, Mr. Weiskopf, that I get noticed whenever these sites are going to have something to do with a county agency. I do know that other people have looked at coming here and they've said, well, they looked at our regulations and they don't think they're friendly enough for them to want to come here. And what I want to do is say, I think these are good ways for people who have these properties to be able to put them into the highest and best use. It serves a function for the public. It helps us with our green energy. And lastly, if you can tell us how many acres we are looking to have solar, or is it 200, is it 1,000, or whatever acreage we would like to see in St. Mary's County. I know we have this idea of trying to get this rural legacy area, and I think the idea is something like 60,000 acres or 20,000. I can't remember what it was. We either have 20 and we're trying to get 60. If we could know those types of goals that we're trying to achieve, that way we can look at sites and say, we've still got this level we want to get to, and we know this goal. And if we can get to it quicker, I'm in agreement with that. So sorry to be so passionate, but I think this is a great idea, and thank you. And Mr. Kane and your group, thank you very much. You helped us out. It's a good idea. Thank you.
I would agree that our current regulations are not very friendly, because currently we would require any and all to go through the conditional use process. So that's the recommendation, is to pick out those preferred areas and eliminate the conditional use process for those preferred areas.
Good idea.
We
Good idea.
look forward to drafting those regulations.
Right.
All right. Well,
Excellent.
Well, as the report clearly reports out from the Chesapeake Conservancy, the numbers well exceed the 331 gigawatt per year estimate St. Mary's County share of usage as compared to the rest of the state. So I think following Commissioner Hewitt's suggestion, how many acres does it take to produce 331 gigawatts per year?
yeah, whatever the
The
metrics
math.
are. Yes.
I don't know what it is.
Well, if it ends up being like, 500 acres, at least we know we're in the ballpark.
Yeah.
If it's 5,000 acres, well, we got work to do.
I'll get you an answer.
Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioners.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Any other questions, Commissioners?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunt, Mr. Knight, thank you very much for your presentation, and thanks to the Solar Committee, and thank you, Mr. Thompson, for being here today. And
Dr. Kane, do you have anything you want to add while you're on the phone, the Zoom?
No, just like to thank the commissioners for doing this, and I agreed with all the comments you made. Our desire was really to try to steer this into preferred areas, and I just want to finally note that in the preferred areas, that would satisfy any kind of requirements that the state's put on this if we were to find most of those areas conducive for solar. So I think, as Commissioner Hewitt suggested, I think to the degree we can get those preferred areas filled in, I think we will have done our lift for the county on their renewable energy goals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, gentlemen. Item I is from the Department of Public Works and Transportation with an MOU between the National Center for Applied Transit Technology and the St. Mary's County Transit Systems for Technology Strike Team Technical Assistance. Mr. Diedrich presenting this morning.
Thank you very much. I believe Ms. Swint's still on the phone. We're on Zoom. All right. Basically, we have money to buy advanced transportation software, IT work. We are not experts on it. We've worked with MTA, we've worked with IT, and we realize we need more help on this. People that deal with small transit systems and their transition to being able to do next bus, and also offer a much better scheduling methodology and data development so we can analyze how well we're doing. We need help on that. So Ms. Swint, would you like to tell us a little bit about how you came across this group and the services that they can offer for us to help us fine-tune the RFP that you've got, and MTA has been, still hasn't responded to us on?
Yes, sure. I first came across this information. It was emailed to me through our partners with MTA. It was an application available to transit providers within the state of Maryland. Out of the entire state, they were only selecting 3. So we completed the application and we were approved. We have a kickoff meeting on Thursday, the 19th, where we will start to make momentum. And like Mr. Dietrich said, it's a team that will come in and evaluate our current system and technology. They are subject matter experts who will be able to identify and better advise as to what better technologies are available. I came down to transportation about a year ago, and my predecessor had left. One of my first things was the solicitation for the dispatch software. and we haven't been able to make much progress with that back and forth with MTA. As Mr. Dietrich mentioned, it is still with them. So we're hoping that this task force can better help us identify the technology that will really make us more successful, as well as help us to write the solicitation so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Good. Very good.
This sounds like a really good idea. I think it's a long time in coming, and we've already got the funding there for it. I think this is very much needed, and I think the commissioners have all expressed support for this in the past. So I move to approve the MOU between the National Center for Applied Transit Technology and St. Mary's Transit Systems for Technology Strike Team Technical Assistance to assist STS in developing an actionable plan.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any disapprovals? Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners. And item J is also from Public Works and Transportation with the Airport Rescue Grant Program application. Mr. Dietrich?
It's Airport Day.
So this is the American Rescue Plan funds that come directly from FAA. For the money that we have available, we would like to buy a generator to power the airfield lights if the power goes out, very important for improved safety on the airfield, and do HVAC modifications to improve cleaning the current systems for cleaning the air of viruses in the terminal.
Talking about the terminal building or?
The terminal building specifically, we may go into the blue hangar as well.
But county-owned buildings?
County-owned buildings at the airport.
Yeah, I was concerned, I was not concerned, I was confused, as would this grant be for the county to do upgrades, and it is, from what you're saying, versus will we be giving out individual grants for people there, whether it be, I don't know, AirTech or ASIC or somebody like that?
No, this is very specifically for airport operations to anything that have been impacted by the virus. And quite honestly, our income is not down from fuel sales and so forth. So we're looking, and this has to be much more narrowly targeted than the original money. Ms. Swint, can you add any further detail to that?
Okay.
Not much, other than it is for operational use. The only ability we had as far as distributing in the form of grant was to cover any delinquent lease revenue that we may have incurred. And like Mr. Dietrich said, that's not the case at this airport. This airport did really very well through this pandemic, with all three of our flight schools still maintaining operations, and all of our takeoffs and landings are where they typically are. So the airport has fared very well through this pandemic.
As had the county, so thank God for that. I move to approve the grant application under the American Rescue Plan Act 2021, Public Law 117-2, ARPA, from the Federal Aviation Administration in the amount of $59,000, and authorize the Commissioner President to sign all related documents.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any disapprovals?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners. And the last item for the County Administrator time is item K from the Office of the County Attorney, with a resolution to designate the County Treasurer to issue bingo licenses and to adopt regulations for the administration of the bingo licenses. Mr. Weiskopf presenting.
Thank you. Good morning. It's still morning, Commissioners. David Weiskopf, County Attorney, presenting a resolution to designate the County Treasurer as the designee to take the applications for the bingo licenses and to issue the bingo license itself, and to also accept the record-keeping aspect of it. Basically, three things. Ms. Kelly is in the audience, and she has agreed to this. It's roughly, I think, about 10 to 30 a year. Right now, it's pretty low. I think the fee is $1. And it's really for nonprofit groups, as you all are aware. So I don't know if you have any questions about it, but basically, this was legislation that was done in last year because the sheriff wanted to get out of the issuing of licenses business and just be in the enforcement business. So that's where we are.
Only question I had is, will this require more FTEs?
No, it will actually be more modernized. The treasurer is going to put it online for the application process and the reporting process and the license process. So it should be much smoother and no FTEs needed at this time.
I just want to recognize our treasurer for sitting through our very long meeting to be the last agenda item, so thank you for that.
Has she agreed to all this?
She has.
Okay.
Hopefully, I won't be coming back next year for a change.
Okay.
As of now, she's agreed.
Approve and adopt the resolution to designate the county treasurer to issue bingo license and to adopt regulations for the administration of bingo licenses.
Second.
Have a first and second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? The ayes have it.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr.
Commissioners.
Weisskopf.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
And thank you, Commissioners. This completes County Administrator time.
Okay. That takes us into Commissioner time, and we'll start with Commissioner Hewitt.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner President Gay. Well, Solar Task Force. Man, that's been something that's been on our plate for a while now. And look, we had the farmers upset. We had Navy potentially upset. I shouldn't say upset, but concerned. And we figured out a way to make it work and come out with a win-win at the end of the day. Again, thank you for Mr. Kane and all the people who served on that committee, that task force, and everything the county did to make it. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. It's allowed us to identify some properties in the county that have been very hard-pressed to figure out what they can do with those properties, and this is a good thing, so that's great. Tomorrow, we start MACO out in Ocean City, and out there, we have the opportunity to meet with different secretaries from the governor. We get to meet with MDOT, Sean Powell, one of our own from St. Mary's County, actually, and we get to talk about, hey, how about a little bit of help for our roads? How can we relieve some congestion? How can we fix some of the potholes that we got going on? And what can we do? We get to meet with MDE and talk about some of their regulations and things that they're doing, and how can we get a little bit of help with St. Clements Shores and that wastewater treatment plant. Again, and we'll meet with the Secretary of Health and Health Department for the state to maybe understand, at least for this commissioner, a little bit of our role as a Board of Health person. I mean, I kind of got the overview, but I'd like to hear it from the state part. Point is, it's a chance, opportunity for us to improve what we know and work with our relationship with the state to provide a better product for our citizens. And it's very important. Now, today is also a very good day. I'm very happy today. And someone say, well, what's the big deal, Mr. Hewitt? Well, the big deal is we got our county administrator back. Look, she's been out for however long it's been, too long, in my opinion. We need her. We're glad to have you. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Hewitt. Thank you. Oh, I'm supposed to say glad to be back. And I sincerely am glad to be back. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Well, I've got a couple things to talk about this morning. So first off, I think it's fitting and important that we acknowledge the situation in Afghanistan. Commissioner Morgan referenced it during the invocation this morning. It's just a terrible situation over there. We're in a military community. We're a rural farming community, but we're also a military community. We've got a lot of active service people who have served in Afghanistan. We've got a lot of government civilian employees and contractors, people that I work with, who have taken multiple trips to Afghanistan, who have built up the infrastructure, the military infrastructure that's there, and all of that's getting left behind. It's hard to see the images on the news of what's happening, and the people who did do work there, you did good work, you did important work, and for 20 years you made that country safer for the people living there. So thank you for your service and for what you've done there. Ms. Kelly left already, but I want to give a shout out to our county treasurer, to our State Department of Assessments and Taxation, SDOT, to our county IT department, especially to our Department of Social Services, because we've gotten a lot of grant money over the last year or two with COVID. A lot of federal money and state money has rolled down, and there's been a lot of different. It's been a weird new scenario we're living in. The eviction moratorium, I believe, is still in place, so people who are behind in their rent aren't being evicted from the places that they're living, and I understand that, but it's impacting people. It's impacting the landlords that own these properties. And a couple of weeks ago, we approved funding, grant funding that rolled down that will help to pay for people who are delinquent in their rents. So it's going to help out the landlords. And so Department of Social Services, they're tasked with getting this funding out there. They know the big landlords. They know the landlords that own 30 plus units that they're renting out, but they have trouble reaching the small mom and pop landlords, the people who are renting one or two places, the people who are really impacted by this, and this commissioner board has expressed that concern. So those different groups, Department of Social Services, County Treasurer, SDOT, the County IT department, they've been working really well together to try to identify these different properties that might have these landlords, to try and get the word out that there's this funding available for you to help you out during the situation. So thank you to all of them for the great work that they're doing. I want to highlight, just about 2 weeks ago was the Bowles Farm Lawnmower Races. It's a phenomenal event. It was a great event. They weren't able to hold it last year due to COVID. They held it one night only because of the rain on Saturday, so it was Friday night. It was huge. It was a record-setting event for them. There was 138 different lawnmowers there to race from over 13 states. If you haven't been, put it on your calendar for next year. It's just a fun event that goes to support the 7th District Optimists and the 7th District Rescue Squad, great organizations. It was a really good time, and there's a lot of work that goes into that, especially by the Bowles family. Thank you all for all the work that you do. I also want to recognize Nicoletti's Pizza over the weekend celebrated their 40th anniversary. So I, being the youngest one sitting up here, grew up eating at Nicoletti's, and so very fond memories, and it's a great establishment, great pizza. So congratulations to them for 40 years. Getting close to the end of my stuff, but I want to also announce that I was appointed to serve on the NACO, the National Association of Counties IT Standing Committee. So I'm a member of that committee. They talk about broadband, they talk about cybersecurity. Those are important issues that impact St. Mary's County. So I'm happy to be on there. I'm looking forward to the MACO conference the rest of this week, and I'll provide some updates as we go through it. Thank you all. Have a great week.
Thank you, Mr. John.
Thank you. I thank Commissioner Colvin for bringing up the issues in Afghanistan. There's one, I want to make sure our veterans out there understand that there is mental health available to you. The Department of Veterans Affairs is staffed significantly to get you help. Get us help. I say get us help because I am a veteran. And, when the first thing that popped into my mind is, what was all this worth? What was it for? Is this our Vietnam? The comparisons that come to it. And on top of that, I think that we have a magnifying factor to this, where this is the 20th anniversary, or the 20th anniversary of the terror attacks by the Taliban on the World Trade Center. I think that this is a very hard time for many people looking back at it. And I wrote a post about it, and I think it needs to be said, because veterans out there often think about what was it worth. But I know you're angry, I know you're torn, dismayed. You may feel hopelessness because you're still mourning the losses of your friends, your battle buddies, your loved ones, families, our Gold Star families, wondering what it's all for, doubting everything that you did. But I'll say this, you did your job. It was not for nothing. You fought our nation's battles swiftly, without hesitation. You dispatched the enemies of this nation. You avenged the deaths of the thousands of people that were killed on September 11, 2001. And damn it, you did it well. You did it well. In a time when freedom itself was attacked, you protected it. You provided a blanket for others to peaceably rest so they could lay their burdens down while you picked them up. What you did was not for nothing, and what you did do was for everything. So this loss in Afghanistan is not your burden to bear as a veteran, and the families of veterans, it's not your burden to bear. I say it in this manner because I have battle buddies that have called me and said, what is this for? What did we do? You know, and then you remember the names of your friends that you lost. It's tough. Pick up a phone, call a friend. We don't need to add to the 22. And, you know, as everybody navigates, remember where we're at. And if you do have a friend that's a veteran, pick up the phone and check on them, because things like this can be a tough time. And I would have loved to, and I'll segue off of that, I would have loved to have been there in person, but my son has pneumonia, or had the beginning stages of pneumonia in his upper right lung. And unfortunately, I caught some of what he had, not the pneumonia end of it, but the vertigo and the sinuses. I didn't want to risk getting anybody that was sitting around me sick, as I am myself sick, so I decided to do it this way, and I thank Ms. Casas and staff for reacting at a last-minute notice to make this happen, because I wasn't sure which way it was going to go. And fortunately, he did have to get COVID tested, which is not pleasant. If anybody out there has a 4-year-old and you've had to get him tested, it is not pleasant. But he was a trooper through it all, and thank God it came back negative. And I appreciate our staff navigating these times and the support that my colleagues have given to staff, and I'm very happy that Dr. Bridget is back.
Thank you very much.
Back with us and taking the reins. So I'm glad you're back, and it was good to see you last week, and thank you, Mr. President.
John, I got to admit, you look like a DJ up there. I mean, that setup at home. Holy mackerel, are you going to ESPN pretty soon, or what are you doing? Look at that microphone, man. You're ready to go.
It's the podcast. It's the podcast.
Well, anyhow, I want to thank both Commissioner Colvin and O'Connor for heartfelt words about not only the tragedy going on in Afghanistan, which is horrendous, and the finger pointing that's going on, but also the people that in Haiti who are suffering through the earthquake and whatever tropical storms may be coming their way. But we've been off for 2 weeks, and lots of events have happened in the community, but I want to highlight one and sort of parlay into another part of the conversation. And that is National Night Out was held a couple weeks ago. And it's a great event. It's held throughout the county. And this year, we used to go down to Colony Square in my district, but this year they went to Nicollet Park. And a number of organizations were there, supported by Recreations and Parks. You had the health department there, the NAACP there, the YMCA folks were there, and it was a great event. You had great sponsors coming in providing food. Uncle D's Ribs was there, one of the pizza places were there, etc. But importantly is what people saw that they'd never have seen or became aware of, and that was Nicollet Park. And Nicollet Park's a great place back there. You get to it off FDR Boulevard by the old post office there, Heritage Graphics. You had kids out playing. You had a water park going. Kids were playing in the water park. You had a skate park going. Kids were riding skateboards and bicycles back there. You had John Duckett and Jonathan Gelrod down there doing basketball drills. You had an air bounce machine. You had all kinds of things going on down there. And it's amazing how many people showed up that night. And everybody says, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to do. Well, that night they found plenty of things to do. And quite frankly, it's there every day for everybody to be able to use and go back there and participate with. So it was a great, great event down there. But then what happened a couple of days later, I was talking to Mr. Shepard. Mr. Shepard took some administrators from the high school, Lexington Park Elementary, and Carver Elementary School down there. And some of them said, I didn't even know this existed back there. And if you think of the proximity from Carver Elementary School, Great Mills High School, and Exeter Park Elementary School to Nicollet Park, it's walking distance. So when people are saying there's nothing to do, there's plenty of things to do. You just have to move your feet a little bit and go find them. So that's going to be one of I'm going to talk a little bit about parks in Lexington Park a few more times. But if you haven't been to Nicollet Park, just drive back there and go see it. If your kids are looking for something to do, take them back there. If the kids want something to do, they can walk or ride their bikes back there. So, please take advantage of what the amenities are that we already have in place. And please take advantage of them so that, you can see what the county has to offer, particularly in the Lexington Park area. With that, I want to say thank you. You all have a good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'd like to echo some about what Commissioner Connor said about Afghanistan. One thing we did accomplish, even though after 20 years we are leaving there now, there's been no terrorist attack on St. Mary's County, state of Maryland, or the country in 20 years. I would say I had a lot to say that this may have helped to prevent that. Let's hope we continue to prevent it, but for those who served in Afghanistan, that's what you did. You protected our country for over 20 years plus, and we will continue to protect it. It's unfortunate. I served in Vietnam in 67, 68. I wonder after that happened, what did we do? And I know it's halfway across the world in a place that I'd never been there before until I got there, and it was a strange country to me, but I said, okay, we're fighting to fight communism, stop the spread of whatever, terrorism, whatever, and hopefully it worked. I was disappointed when we left Vietnam and it seemed to turn over to the North Vietnamese anyway. Afghanistan seems to be taken over again by the Taliban. I don't know what the final outcome is going to be, but I will applaud our governor for saying that he was willing to take more Afghanistans into our state, because there's a lot of people that helped us over there in 20 years that are probably going to be punished by the takeover of the Taliban if we don't do something to help them out. So I applaud him for opening up Maryland's borders to take a few in, and I hope that we take the ones out that might be harmed the most because they provided services to our country and to our people over there. So let's hope that it's very quick action what happened. I know Vietnam, we left there, was a quick thing, and yeah, we were flying people off top of the embassy to get them out of there. But for those you served your country well, and I thank you very much. We did an important thing today. We're talking about there's no doubt in my mind that we did the Tesla charging station there at Harris Teeter a couple weeks ago. We're heading in that direction as far as electric and solar seems to be one of the big things for us in our area. And I just remember driving down North Carolina a few months ago, and there was a 1,000-acre farm that was being processed for solar. 1,000 acres. All that farmland is being covered up by solar panels. And I'm assuming that's it's obviously we're heading in that direction. Our present administration here and the government is heading in that direction, and we got to get ahead of the game here on this to make sure we protect what we can here, but use what land we have to use. They preferred. I agree with both Commissioner Hewitt and Morgan on selecting and start pushing ahead on this and get it done. With that said, I thank everybody. And at MACO, I want to also make a point that I'm on the board of directors for MACO. This is an important event because we not only get to see many other vendors there to help select for our county, but we get a chance to meet with all of the directors from the state level, which is the once-a-year thing that we get a chance to go up and see them, except for me going to MACO every Wednesday during the general session. These are important people to get to them and let them know what our needs are and push them to try to get like the roads improved, whatever, to help us out in our county. And that's the main purpose we go there, is to help our county. And that's why we're going. So anyway, with that said, I need a motion to enter into closed session.
I'll make a motion that we enter closed session to discuss personnel.
Second.
Our first, second, all in favor? Aye. Closed and go into general session. We'll have the closed session here. We're going to do it
5 minutes or how long? Give us 5 minutes?
Yeah, we'll take 5 minutes. Yeah, we're going to do it right here.